Text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of August. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Soft touch Britain. Career criminals with over 100 convictions each are spared jail as the government cracks down on keyboard warriors. Could we be slapping the wrong wrists?
Them's the breaks. The government caves into train driver pay demands, offering a 15% pay rise. This could end the rail strikes, but at what cost?
And we'll be joined by the Tory leadership hopeful, Tom Tugendhat. What has he got to say on security, tax and immigration?
I'm absolutely shocked by some of these statistics on our criminal justice system. I mean, just to begin with, police are only solving 5.5% of all crimes. 5.5%. Now, that is down dramatically on previous years. 10 years ago, it was far more than that. But these career criminals, imagine having 100 previous convictions, you get done for something else, you get brought into court, and yet you still are spared jail. What is that about?
It's quite remarkable. You'd think that perhaps after the second time you're caught doing something, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth, that perhaps the criminal justice system would get the message that this person isn't reforming, that the non-custodial sentence that has been handed down hasn't done the job. But by the 100th time and still not a minute of prison, it boggles the mind.
I mean, you had Yvette Cooper talking about how no one has any respect for the police anymore. Well, it's probably because if you offend again, continue to reoffend 50 times to 100 times, you can still end up walking the streets.
And it's extraordinary. It's not just at the extreme end. There are, more than 100 criminals who have 100 convictions and have never been sent to prison. going through the criminal justice system but not ending up in prison at the end of it. It's not just that, it's this graph that you've got here, Emily, from the Telegraph.
Yes, so this graph, and we're going to put this to, I believe, Neil O'Brien, who collated this data, or at least asked for it in an FOI, a Freedom of Information. Essentially, average number of convictions before being jailed, theft, 26. And
you have to be caught and convicted 26 times.
I find it hard to believe. I actually find it hard to believe. We're going to put this to the former minister of...
He was a health minister, but he's also been a minister in a number of different departments, but now he's a backbench opposition MP and he's putting his energies into getting some answers from the government.
Can that possibly be true?
It's extraordinary.
Convicted 26 times of theft, yet not sentenced to jail. Quite incredible. Anyway, we're going to work out what's happening. And, of course, we've seen a lot of online speech. A lot coming hard on that sort of thing. So we'll get to the bottom of it. But first, your headlines with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Emily. Good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 12. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. The proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the Department for Education. GB News has spoken to students at Lichfield Cathedral School.
The results have gone pretty well. I've gotten into the university I wanted to.
Better than I expected.
Well, it feels amazing and weird at the same time. I've had to do Year 12 twice, but I'm finally here and I've actually gone and done it, so I'm really happy.
But Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says there are still inequalities in the education system.
Today is about celebrating the achievements of our young people, but I do recognise that the gaps that we've seen opening up under the last Conservative government where it comes to regional differences are really stark, and that gap is widening. There is an awful lot that we need to do, and I want to make sure as Education Secretary that we break down those barriers to opportunity for our young people, that where you're from doesn't determine what you can go on to achieve in life.
The economy is continuing its recovery from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter, according to official data. The Office for National Statistics said gross domestic product increased by 0.6% between April and June. Labour's Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, says the government inherited a huge financial challenge from the Tories.
The economic facts are clear. Because we have the highest debt burden that we've had for over 60 years, and we're having to spend billions and billions of pounds on debt interest to pay that off every month, and because working people have got the highest tax burden since the 1940s, people at home know, and anyone can look at the statistics, that what we inherited from the Conservatives was the worst fiscal inheritance since the Second World War.
But Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Laura Trott, says the economic growth is thanks to previous Tory policies.
These are really positive GDP figures this morning, but the only person who's not out celebrating them is the Chancellor. You know, Rachel Reeves is sitting in the Treasury fuming because this is yet more data to undermine her narrative that the economic inheritance was bad, and she can no longer use that as a pretext for the tax rises that she was planning all along.
Train drivers are to vote on a new offer aimed at ending their long-running pay dispute, which has resulted in days of strike action. The ASLEF union says the offer was made in talks at the Department for Transport, which started after Labour won the general election following months of stalemate under the Conservatives. The drivers are being recommended to accept the offer, which could bring an end to industrial action and overtime bans. Drivers are being urged to avoid scanning QR codes to pay for parking following a number of scams. The RAC is advising drivers to make payments only with cash, cards or official apps. Recently, fraudsters have been placing stickers featuring QR codes on parking signs in locations across the country, taking victims to fake websites to input their card details before spending money from their accounts. Women living with breast cancer are being put at risk because of a shortage of staff who can deliver specialist scans. That's according to the Society of Radiographers, who've warned that a shortage of mammographers have reached critical levels in NHS England, leading to late diagnoses and treatment delays. The government says it will tackle these issues head-on to ensure the NHS has the staff it needs to be there for all of us when we need it. And the Princess Royal, she is marking her 74th birthday today. The King's younger sister, frequently dubbed Britain's hardest working royal, cheered on a number of Team GB athletes at the Paris Olympics last week in her role as the British Olympic Association president. Earlier this summer, she was hospitalised with concussion and minor injuries after being kicked or headbutted by a horse. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, meanwhile, are expected to arrive in Colombia after an official invitation by the country's Vice President. It's understood Prince Harry and Meghan will focus on the impact of the digital world on young people, the military community and female empowerment. The Duke and Duchess will also explore Colombia's history and culture. Excuse me. And global superstar Taylor Swift, she is closing the European leg of her Eras tour with 5 nights at London's Wembley Stadium. It's the first time she's returned to the UK since paying tributes to the victims of the Southport attack last month, where 3 young girls died in a mass stabbing at a dance class featuring the star's music. Earlier this month, Taylor Swift was forced to cancel 3 shows in Vienna after a suspected Islamist terror plot. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 12. Now, dangerous career criminals with more than 100 convictions apiece are being spared jail time.
Yes, this is quite incredible. Reports suggest the amount of people with multiple convictions avoiding prison has nearly tripled from 1,289 in 2007 to 3,325 in 2023.
Well, this is all at a time when the state is cracking down on rioting, violent disorder, and with some controversy surrounding sentencing for posts on social media during those nationwide riots following the Southport attack.
Yes, it's a complex picture, but joining us now is GB News national reporter Charlie Peters in the studio to break this down for us. So what's been revealed here?
Well, this is comprehensive data from the Ministry of Justice, revealed through parliamentary questions by Neil O'Brien, a Tory MP, a former minister. You've just gone through a couple of the quite stunning statistics from what Mr O'Brien's uncovered, but I think another key one is that offenders with more than 50 previous convictions have been spared jail in more than 50,000 cases since 2007. So lots of people with several and extensive rap sheets getting away from jail despite their checkered and colourful criminal past. Now,
sorry, Charlie, let's just focus in on that for a second.
Sure.
That's 50 separate convictions applied to 50,000 people. Yeah. They've gone through the criminal justice system 50 times. And they're not being sent to prison.
Well, often there are multiple convictions in a single incident, but it does suggest it's very rare for someone to get 50 convictions in one case.
Yeah.
OK, extremely rare. So it's highly likely these are taking place over multiple different court cases and proceedings, mostly through the magistrates. Now, Mr O'Brien has compiled an average list of how many offences you need to be convicted of before you are jailed according to each crime. Now, for burglary, you are jailed after an average of 26 previous convictions. For robbery, 14.5 previous convictions before you see any jail time. Assaulting a police officer is 19.6 previous convictions. That's how many prior convictions you need to have before you're sent behind bars. Possession of offensive weapon, 14 previous convictions. All this discussion right now about knife crime, of course, a consistent cause of concern. Well, you need to be seen with it 14 times before you're sent away on average. Theft, 26 convictions, and sexual assault, 5 convictions. There was a big discussion yesterday, wasn't there, about sexual assault on trains and public transport, how that's rising. Well, 5 prior convictions before you are jailed for that particular offence. I've got to say, this is happening day in and day out in the magistrates. Now, a lot of our reporters from GB News have spent a lot of time in courts over the last couple of weeks from this violent disorder and other associated issues. On Tuesday, I was in Westminster magistrates waiting for a charging of a Romanian national for stabbing an Australian schoolgirl. And that was a delayed start. And while I was waiting, I saw another few cases go through the magistrates. Now, in the case prior to that charging, a 19-year-old girl was in the dock, having pled guilty for common assault, having spat at an innocent bystander during a bar fight. And then when a police officer was summoned to the incident, she also pled guilty to assaulting an emergency worker. She hit the police officer and brought him to the Grand. Now, this 19-year-old girl, having pled guilty to both those crimes, the spitting described as disgusting by the district judge, he then sentenced her to 80 hours of a community order and a fine no greater than £490. That was the sentence for spitting and assault. Now, that individual, that woman, had no prior convictions. Other mitigating factors were her age. 19 is considered relatively youthful. You're still developing your mental faculties, and also she was soon to start a degree. Now, those are the mitigating factors. Now, based on what we now have learned from this data compiled by the former minister, for assaulting a police officer, she'll need another 17.6 convictions, just the 2 she's got now, before she might see jail time.
This is quite incredible. I mean, what does this say about our criminal justice system? Is this an issue with the lack of prison spaces? So it's actually quite hard to send people away now to do jail time now. We know that's a huge problem. We know how overfull they are. We know that we've got this now early release scheme, so even if you are sentenced to jail, you may well be out in less than half of your sentence anyway. But is it also a cultural thing that we are actually just a bit soft on crime in this country?
Well, there are sentencing guidelines that judges have to follow. They can work according to the constraints within them, so they have some leeway, but they are quite tightly confined as to what they are allowed to do. And there is, of course, pressure on courts at the moment, a huge backlog in the Crown courts in particular, and an extensive delay leading to the case that when many people finally find themselves in front of a Crown court judge, they think, well, you've been in the system for several years. That limits the need or the impulse to give them a custodial sentence. Now, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said and has admitted this is an issue, that too many people are feeling as though crime has no consequence. And with the statistics we're hearing today, it's no surprise that she's saying that. But the custodial estate is absolutely slammed. There are so few prison spaces. But at the same time, with all this disorder, 400 charges put forward by the CPS after the recent riots, we know that they can find more space when they need to. When the political will is there, the state steps in, as they have done with these riots. Perhaps there might be time to ask, why won't you do that for those with 5 prior sexual assault convictions? Why is it 5 before you do that? Why is it 20 before burglary? These are the questions I think that the government needs to explain.
Absolutely they do. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters. We'll catch up with you later. Shocking statistics, really.
Well, let's speak now with retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville, because, Mike, I think a lot of people who don't have experience of the criminal justice system will think if you've been convicted for burglary, you should probably be banged up behind bars, not wait 26 times for 26 convictions before that happens.
It's truly shocking, isn't it? I mean, I spoke to a career criminal I put in prison recently. I've been now retired, and he admitted committing 10 times as many offences as he actually was charged with. So when somebody talks about 26 burglaries, you're probably talking the best, over 300 burglaries, and people will be rightfully shocked. And what they see is the sentences are so short, if ever. And we're forever told by left-wing academics, of course, that prison doesn't work. What they'll never tell you is that, as you've read out, that people are not going to prison after 10, 20 and 30 offences. But what's really the hypocrisy of the left that we now see is that suddenly prison does seem to work if they don't like the people they're sending there, if they have a certain political viewpoint or whatever. But the criminal justice system is just failing normal people who just want to live their lives, be safe on the street, safe in their homes, and they're not being allowed to do that because of a liberal elite who control the criminal justice system.
Well, Mike, it does seem sometimes that we concentrate so much on the perpetrators of crime and whether they're going to be rehabilitated in prison or whether they're going to come out and reoffend. Most people want criminals to be put in jail so that they can't cause any further harm to the rest of us. And I think the focus needs to be far more on our own public safety and us feeling a sense of justice in that respect than necessarily what's going to happen for that particular criminal. But the other statistic that blows my mind, the police are only solving 5.5% of all crimes. So that's about 1 in 20. Which is staggering. 5.5%. It's almost as if there's no point calling the police.
It's truly shocking. And today, the Metropolitan Police reports out saying, again, their investigation of crime is inadequate. I was proud to be a Scotland Yard detective, and I saw my job as to protect people, to make sure they weren't being burgled or robbed or assaulted or whatever. I did a Freedom of Information Act request that showed that 70% of the Met hadn't arrested anybody in 1 year. How can that be? I've known officers to arrest 4 people in 1 day. We can almost like see why the police get demoralised, because you arrest a burglar, you put them before the court, oh, here's a community sentence, out you go again. So it's like some bizarre game where you have to catch people, but as soon as you catch them, they're running free. And it's just that it's the average people who get let down. You said there, Emily, about it, normal people would think that you go to jail if you committed so many burglaries. The trouble is that the criminal justice system and the top echelons of the police are controlled by a liberal elite who think that prison doesn't work, who think that criminals, apart from those who are on social media, are some kind of victims of society, and it lets us all down.
It is extraordinary to look at these numbers and to look at the consequence of what's going on. I think back to, was it the 1990s when the United States started being much, much more tough on incarcerating criminals, and the homicide rate started to fall. The spike in crime that the United States saw through the late 70s and 1980s actually started to fall when they brought in all of these rules like 3 strikes and you're out, and the prison population really did expand. Now, there's been a huge amount of criticism about the proportion of people in the United States in prison, but it seems to have correlated with a safer country.
Absolutely. And what you find is that if for 100 crimes, that doesn't mean there's 100 criminals. It's probably 10 criminals committing 10 crimes each. So that a load of the crime is committed by nasty little individuals who are stealing, robbing, raping and whatever else. And they need to be locked away. But again, the problem comes is this, is that the people who decide whether they go to jail or not don't have to live with them. So they send them back to a council estate where they cause utter misery to people who are, I was in the shop, local shop to me, 2 old ladies, like my mother really, and they were people who'd been in there threatening them with needles and saying, I know where you live, so they could just steal from the shop. Those ladies need protecting. Those evil individuals need to be locked up. And it's just, I fear that it's the people in charge don't want to do this. But we've suddenly seen this reinvigoration that apparently prison does work.
And Mike, you can forget about getting a police officer around for antisocial behaviour. I mean, fat chance of that, at least in the capital anyway. But Mike, just lastly, what do you think about the accusation that the police are focusing too much on speech online?
I think it's very worrying. I think that people do say stupid things online. We've just seen a woman sent to prison, no previous convictions, for saying she's going to blow up a mosque, which is a stupid and evil thing to say. But she had no the ability to carry out that threat. And she possibly should be given a caution or something so her name is on record. But what people will see is that she's given 15, 16 months in prison, and that somebody who's stolen, robbed, burgled 20, 25 times isn't in prison. It seems perverse. And a real bad thing is when your average person thinks the system isn't working for me. And that is really dreadful, because that's when society starts to break down.
Well, Mike Neville, I think a lot of people will think that you're speaking a lot of sense there. Thank you so much for joining us. Retired Scotland Yard detective, of course.
It's a pretty bleak picture, isn't it? That when someone goes out there and commits multiple crimes, gets convicted of those crimes. So the police actually catch them, arrest them, charge them, they're convicted.
And they're given a £400 fine.
So why would you give up a career of criminality, you know? I think you have to tackle the small crimes as well.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if those that started off on the small crimes didn't then go into the larger crimes, especially if they're not slapped down quickly.
Yeah, if you get away with a mugging, will you move on to a burglary? An armed burglary, whatever. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain. Please do get in touch about what Mike Neville was saying, and also Charlie Peters. We've got lots more coming up.
Yes, have the rail strikes reached the end of the line? Well, the government and the union ASLEV announced they've reached a deal. Well, it's going to be 15% pay rises. Could it bring an end to the long-running dispute? But what will it cost us?
More on that after this short break.
headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Bad news for Liberal mothers who want to score virtue points by transitioning their kids, Lewis.
You know,
Tell us what it is.
Is a California dad is granted full custody of 4-year-old son after boy's mom tried to raise the child non-binary.
It's almost like cult-like behaviour. You've got the mother transitioning and then the transitioning the son as well. It's interesting that, you know, it's almost like a religion. You get, you know, if you're a Christian, your kids are probably going to be Christian. If you're, you know, Hindu, your kids are probably going to be Hindu. And if you're transgender, your kids are probably going to be transgender.
There's absolutely a causation there. We see plenty of times in videos. This is exactly it. Like, and also we see the children of celebrities and people in particularly sort of liberal environments. It doesn't happen in some village in Indonesia or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's no such thing as a trans child. There's no such thing as non-binary. What there is are people with mental health issues and parents who want a virtual signal and also want to brainwash their children. This is an egregious example of that, where she was basically taking him to Disneyland, but he couldn't get on a ride unless he wore princess shoes. I mean, really evil, horrible stuff. You know, forced to wear a dress on his birthday. Just really nasty stuff. Now, here's the thing. You talk about the court going to him. No, that's not what happened. He took 800 pages of documentary evidence. He took 8 hours of police body camera footage showing this mental behaviour from the mother. And guess what? The courts ruled that the mum got him. They ruled against him. The only reason that he got custody of his child is because, thank God, a child protective services officer randomly got involved, looked into it themselves, and that's how he eventually got custody of the child. So the courts in America are utterly captured.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 24 minutes past 12. Now, the government is hailing a deal with the train drivers' union ASLEV to stop the strikes. Of course, it still has to be voted on by members of the union, but it's 15% pay rises over 3 years. Quite a hefty bit of money.
It is quite a hefty bit of money, quite generous, some might think. But let's speak to the former Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood, on this. John, this is a very generous pay offer, is it not?
Yeah, it looks like a good pay offer, and I would imagine they would accept it. I have no problems with people earning good money, but I think what I do have a problem with is this deal when there are no productivity improvements, because this has got to be paid for. And the reason there have been strikes was the previous government and the previous management of the railways was saying there are improved working practices and improved flexibilities so that we can run decent weekend services that we need in return for decent increase in your pay. And those have all been swept off the table by the Labour government, who've shown that the railway is effectively nationalised already, and they and their officials have supervised a no productivity increase deal on a pretty generous basis. And so the railway isn't going to solve its underlying problems. And my question to Secretary of State, anybody's sensible question to Secretary of State today is who is going to pay this massive increase in pay for drivers without any productivity gains to offset? Is it going to be taxpayers with more subsidy, or is it going to be passengers with higher fares? I presume it's going to be both.
Well, I think that's probably not a bad assumption to make, given that we know that passengers riding on the railways are down by a third since the pandemic. Many people who would be perhaps paying the most towards the railways, commuters and the like, well, they're only coming in 3 out of 5 days now, for the most part. So the amount of money actually going in to the railways has fallen, whilst now the pay for the drivers will have risen by 15%. I mean, how does that maths work in any way, shape or form?
Well, the maths doesn't work unless you say taxpayers stroke fare payers are going to make a much bigger contribution. And just to put this into perspective for your viewers and listeners, is that last year, the total cost to the taxpayer of all the capital investment put in and all of the subsidy to pay the losses was an astonishing £33 billion, an absolutely colossal budget already. And that is why the Secretary of State is being irresponsible if she will not tell us today how this large pay award is going to be paid for, what mixture of taxpayer subsidy and what by fare payers. And if fare payers are going to be expected to pay more, people don't have to go to the office 5 days a week anymore, and people don't have to undertake leisure travel journeys. As you rightly say, the railway is a lot less popular than it was in 2019. They should be putting all their energies, workforce and management, and now above all the government that directs the whole thing, into saying how can we attract enough fare-paying passengers so that these jobs can be sustainable and well rewarded.
I mean, there's a picture here, isn't there? A broader picture. We've seen last month junior doctors have been offered by this new government a 22% increase over 2 years. That's a very large sum of money. 10 billion is going to be given to a 5.5% pay rise for millions of public sector workers as well. These are colossal amounts of money. It's going to be very tricky for Rachel Reeves to stick to her pledge to not raise taxes on working people.
Well, she's certainly going to have to raise taxes somehow, because we now have £9 billion a year of unfunded extra pay awards prior to any extra rail subsidy that this award might require. And she's got to spell out sooner rather than later how she's going to raise that money. Now, of course, she could reduce other items in the budget. I'm sure she'd look at some of those. But in the end, it's going to be taxpayers that pay. Now, I mean, she, like me, thinks the best way to pay for better public services, the best way to pay for better pay, as we did need better pay for doctors, for example, is to grow the economy. But if she now picks on a set of tax rises that hit the people who save, invest, create the jobs, run the small companies, far from having faster growth, she's going to mess the economy up as well, and we won't be repeating the first and second quarter of this year when the UK economy is actually growing quite well.
It is so interesting to look at the parallels between what's going on with our economy now and what was going on in the 1980s and the 1990s. The 90s when you were in the cabinet, of course, which showed that taking away the restrictive practices, that showed that allowing companies to modernise and not be controlled by the trade unions and the growth that unleashed for the country. Do you think in some ways we've gone backwards?
Well, of course we have, and indeed, I mean, rail privatisation, which is now much derided and is largely abolished, in its first decade produced colossal growth in fare-paying passengers because the services were improved and modernised and revised, and working practices were a bit more sensible. And even John Prescott, you know, the doyen of public sector nationalised businesses, had to say, well, you know what, this private sector railway has done a good job. And look at it now. It has been crippled. Obviously, the previous Labour government nationalised the bulk of it because they took all the track signals and stations into public ownership again. And then the last Conservative government nationalised some of the franchises. But they might as well have nationalised the lot, because a franchise holder now is told what timetable to run and told what fares to charge on a lot of the routes. So there's not a lot of flexibility anymore to innovate. And above all, to save our railway and making it a really useful railway we're all proud of, we need to grow the freight side, and we need to grow the leisure side, and we need to have sensible fare structures so that people who go in 2 or 3 days a week get some discount for going in more than once on a regular route. And we don't seem to have that flair to win the public back and to win the freight back, which is the only reason to have the railway in the first place.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that, of course, we have been blighted by endless strikes on the rail system, and perhaps Rachel Reeves is thinking this might save us some money in the long term because the railways will run on time and the train drivers won't go on strike, you know, every other week.
Wouldn't that be a lovely world to live in? But I don't think it's going to be that simple. And I think the first round impact of this, as the deafening silence from the government implies is true, is another big bill both for taxpayers and fare payers. And then when are we going to get reliability? Because the dodging of the productivity measures means that you don't have a workforce that is prepared to work at weekends or whatever.
It's a really important point to make. Sir John Redwood, thank you so much for talking us through that. Really appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're now joined by the Conservative Party leadership candidate, Tom Tugendhat. And Tom, we've got to start on this question of the railways, because this is a pretty large pay offer. Is it, in your view, the right thing or the wrong thing?
Look, I think this is, again, the Labour Party feeding the union paymasters that they've always obeyed. And I'm afraid what this isn't focused on is the real need for massive investment that we need to make a commitment to in order to make sure that people, the travelling public, those people who are actually delivering the jobs and the opportunities that the British people need to survive and to deliver the greater future that we have, that they actually have the full opportunity to enjoy the services that we need. Now, that's where the challenge comes. Now, whenever we've done pay rises as Conservatives, we've always asked for productivity benefits. We've always asked for transformations in working environments to make sure that we're getting more bang, as it were, for your buck, so that people's money, after all, it's not government money, it's your money, actually goes further.
But they kept saying no, didn't they? They kept saying no and then continuing to threaten strike.
But the right thing to do is to be careful, Emily. You know that. It's to be careful with public money. You don't need me to tell you this. You advocate it, both of you advocate it all the time. It's not my money. It's not our money as a government or our money as elected officials. It's your money. It's the British people's money. And it's being spent on Labour's union paymasters for them to settle their internal disputes.
Now, we're going to move on to the issue of law, order, crime and justice. I'm sure you'll have read with great interest the work of your colleague, Neil O'Brien, the front page of The Telegraph today, showing the sheer number of times repeat criminals have to have a conviction before they're actually sent to prison. 26 times on average for people convicted of burglary. I mean, this is a shocking indictment, not just of the criminal justice system, but frankly, of your party's 13 years in power.
Tom, look, you heard me calling this out myself on Tuesday. Very kindly, you commented on it at the time. You know, I called this out because actually what we've got here is we've got a situation where we haven't got two-tier justice, we've got completely inconsistent justice. We don't have police officers regularly arresting, and I don't blame the individual officers. This is a question of leadership. This is a question of making sure we get the right decisions by police leaders and political leaders, and that's not what we've seen from Keir Starmer. It's not what we've seen from Yvette Cooper, and you're absolutely right. It didn't just start then. That's why we need to see some real change, because it's not just about funding more police officers. We've done brilliantly on that, but it's not just that. It's also about prison places, and that's where we need to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Prison places is a massive issue in this, but reading the statistic that only 5.5% of crimes are actually solved when they get to the police is quite incredible. I think a lot of people will read that statistic and be absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, what is going wrong there?
Well, look, this is why I've called for a change of leadership, because we need to look at the way in which the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing are operating. We need to make sure we're getting the right leaders in and we're getting the right effects. Now, in somewhere like our great capital in London, we know that the Metropolitan Police have two duties. They have one, which is obviously their territorial policing responsibility, you know, keeping people safe on the streets, and then they have the national responsibility, counter-terrorism policing and so on. Now, I think, frankly, that's just too great a span. I'd like to see a new police force, a national security police force, set up so that it's actually able to operate, supporting counter-terrorism operations around the United Kingdom. And I'm afraid, and Tom, you've heard me call this out in so many times, supporting us against the state threats that sadly we're seeing all too often. You've heard me saying how Iranian agents have tried to do harm in our country. You've heard that the National Security Act that I introduced has already led to more arrests in my time as Security Minister of Chinese and Russian agents than in the previous decade. You know, we need to be absolutely up to date on this and responsive to the threats that we really do face.
Absolutely. And looking at those countries around the world, there's another thing that I think people worry about, and that's the controls that those countries, Iran, China, Russia, put on their people. They limit their people's freedom of expression, for example. I noticed in your speech on Monday, one of the really interesting lines was how you called out colleagues of yours in the House of Commons who, upon the callous Islamist murder of your friend Sir David Amess, suddenly members of Parliament started talking about how people needed to be nice to each other on social media. Not at all to do with the actual cause of that terrorist action, which was Islamist terrorism. Do you worry that the first lever politicians always reach for seems to be trying to limit freedom of expression rather than tackling root issues?
Look, I completely agree with you, Tom, and I'm grateful you noticed that because, you know, at the time of the 2011 riots, people were saying we needed to close down BlackBerry Messenger. I mean, you know, seriously. This isn't about the technology, it's about the root causes. We need to make sure that the technology works, of course, and we, you know, you and I would both argue that people should be civil online just as they should be civil in person. Of course we should, but that's not the root cause. The root cause is that there are people with fanatical and hateful ideas in our country who are trying to divide us, who are sectarian of various different kinds, or who are trying to express political views through violence. Now, that's just wrong. And it's also wrong that we have got a series of criminals who simply haven't been detained over many years. And indeed, as you've already seen, and I know you've reported, those who committed the riots in recent weeks have a pattern of crime, many of them for burglary and assault. And frankly, they should have been in prison years ago. And what they're doing is they're exploiting the opportunity to commit more crime. They're not particularly motivated.
But do you think that perhaps the police are focusing too much attention, and also the current government too, on what people are saying online, speech online, Facebook posts, tweets and the like, rather than real crime on the streets? Because it does appear that way to a lot of our viewers and listeners.
Well, look, I've always been of the opinion that, you know, what happens online is a bit different. Twitter isn't Britain, right? It's a perspective, it's a view, but it's not the same thing. Crime is actually happening on our streets, and I think there's a priority to be made.
Now, Tom, you're talking to us today from Anglesey. Tell us why you've travelled out to that isle.
Well, I'm on, as it's put on the island, I'm on Ynys Môn, and it's an amazingly beautiful place. It is raining a bit today, but it is an amazingly beautiful place, and it's not my first visit. I was here a little bit earlier this year, and I've been here many times. In fact, I was here for the graduation of some RAF pilots a number of years ago, and I had a great privilege of being in the back of a Hawk jet as they were doing their graduation flight. It was fantastic. And I'm here because, for me, unionism is absolutely indivisible from conservatism. You know, this is all about who we are as a country. We are so much stronger together. We are a fantastic country. But very sadly, the failures of the Conservative Party at the last election, that loss of trust that we all know about, that we've really got to fix, has led to there being no Conservative Welsh MPs. Now, we've got to turn that around. And that starts by listening to our members, listening to people on Ynys Môn, listening to people in Wales and across the United Kingdom.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed. Tom Tugendhat, you are a Conservative Party leadership candidate, as well as many other things. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, well, I'm not sure we got to the bottom of the free speech online issue. It's a very complex one, obviously. We've got an online safety bill act now. Yes. Lots of talk of Labour government wanting to crack down more on it. What's more important when it comes to policing?
But I do think that what Tom was saying about the impetus that politicians often have is misplaced. And I think that a lot of people will have listened to that and thought, you know what, that seems to be right, that there's been too much focus on one side of the ledger and not enough on the other side of the ledger. Also, good to hear more prison places. I think that's becoming more and more of a cross-party consensus, because it's desperately needed in this country.
Yeah, it's just where they're going to build them.
Yeah, that's true.
And who's going to say, absolutely no way, I don't want that anywhere near me?
That's very, very true.
That's the difficulty, as always, isn't it? But let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say.
Now, a London street sweeper whose bosses prevented him accepting £3,000 raised by his local community for the trip of a lifetime can now go on his dream holiday. We mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but Charlie Peters has the story in full.
Hard-earned holiday for a hard-grafting street sweeper. Paul Spires is a much-loved part of this South London community. He's spent years keeping the streets spotless while bringing joy to the community while playing Elvis from his portable speaker.
When I first got here, it was so quiet, and after 3 months, I decided to buy myself a speaker. I started playing music. Everyone loved it. Everyone loved the music.
So when 200 residents from Beckenham chipped in more than £3,000 to send a sweeper on a summer break to Portugal, it was a moment of great local spirit.
I'm overwhelmed with it. I'm just here to do a job to the best of my ability, and the way they've reacted is brilliant.
Lisa Knight, an estate agent, said she started the campaign after becoming friends with Mr. Spears.
Last Monday, I bumped into him after work. It was a 30-degree day and he'd been working all day. So we stood and had a chat like we often do. And he explained to me that it was his birthday on Tuesday and he wanted to save up to go to Portugal because he's only ever been abroad once for his 60th birthday. And after he left, I decided to make the GoFundMe. I checked with him that he was happy for me to do so before going live. He said yes. So we shared it on the local Beckenham Appreciation Group on Facebook, which is huge and is a real local community standpoint for us, and it just flew away. So many people got in touch, so many people donated.
But Mr. Spears was unable to take the trip due to his employer's rules on accepting gifts. Veolia blamed his contract with Bromley Council, but they said that it was a matter for the waste management firm. Amid all of this bureaucratic bickering, a solution appeared when a travel company spotted an opportunity to help out.
onthebeach.com had an amazing idea to run a competition whereby Paul would be the winner. He had to be aged between the age of 62 and 64, be loved in Beckenham, have the surname Spears and love Elvis. He completes with all of those, and so he's won the holiday and he still gets to go on holiday.
Tough competition for him to win.
Yeah, he was really blown away. He said yesterday he forgot that he'd entered it.
I entered the competition and I forgot all about it, but then all of a sudden I said I won, got a £3,000 voucher which they're going to send me when I can go on holiday, and hopefully I'll be flying out Saturday.
Paul told GB News he was delighted that he could take the holiday and is now set to take his brother David to Albufeira in Portugal. And Veolia has now stepped in and given Paul some extra paid leave to take his holiday.
They did say if I wanted to go 2 weeks, they'd pay me for the 2 weeks, but I'm going to try and split it, so I'll take a week now and maybe a week later on.
The company has also said it will match the £3,000 from Lisa's fundraiser to spend on charity.
Veolia have matched that £3,000 to donated to who I have wanted nominated, and after cancer research, which they've already done, and they said it'd take about 2 or 3 days to sort out.
Everyone likes to hear something nice, and it was a nice thing to do, which is the whole reason we set it up.
Common sense and community spirit have prevailed. Charlie Peters, GB News, Beckenham.
A nice story for August, for the summer holiday day, if you are on a summer holiday at the moment. Of course, we've been talking about what's been called our soft criminal justice system, essentially people racking up multiple, sometimes even 100 convictions, yet being spared from jail. Steve says, so we now know why there is such a backlog in the courts. They're just seeing the same criminals over and over again. Lock them up, clear the backlog, a no-brainer surely. Someone else has said the left says prison doesn't work. That's because they want it to be about rehabilitation first, but prison should be about punishment first, rehabilitation second, but it also should be about just keeping them off the streets.
Well, I think I don't care if prison is about this is going to sound odd. I don't really care if it's about punishment or rehabilitation.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people will say prison needs to be the most sort of stark, horrific experience, no soft furnishings, no television, no GB News. But I don't mind. I mean, as long as the bad people are kept separate from society, as long as these people can't walk the streets, give them an Xbox. Let them watch television. Have a lovely little sofa and a football table in the corner. Build a Disney World for them.
Sometimes
just as long as they're separate from civilised society.
Sometimes it feels like there's more sympathy for the perpetrators of crime and how they're doing in prison and how they're going to get on in there than there is for some of the victims of crime. James says, police is not the issue, it's the politicians. Police will only do what they're asked to. They've got to follow the rules set by the politicians. If you want real change in the current climate of problems, you need to seriously look at laws and our politicians. I think you make a good point there, really, but I also think it's a matter of resources and also police priorities.
But it comes back to this fundamental point, isn't it? There's a small proportion of bad people doing a huge proportion of bad things. And so if you actually stop letting these people out, and if you just find whatever percentage of it is of the country who are the unreformables, who are just the fundamentally psychopathic or troubled or bad people, and keep them separate, then actually policing becomes so much easier.
I mean, look at this, an e-bike mugger, you know? These people will just nick tons of phones and get away with it, just cycle off. Would they have to do it, you know, multiple times, multiple convictions?
There was a case in one of the London boroughs where there was a brilliant individual police officer who went, who did some investigative work, arrested, I think it was one bike theft thief, and suddenly half the bike thefts in the borough stopped.
Suddenly you could walk around with your mobile phone in your hand and not fear for your safety. But there you go. Keep your views coming in. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up.
Well, Taylor Swift is back in London today as she continues her mammoth Eras tour. Security, of course, has been increased after 3 shows in Vienna were cancelled, called off as a result of a suspected terror plot. Could the same be called in Britain? More on that in a bit.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
We haven't talked about Meghan for a very long time.
Well, this is about suicidal ideations, which apparently Meghan Markle says she was having. It's not our place to question whether that is true or not. But she's saying this, Matt, isn't she, so that we can all be aware of online harms and therefore what? We can't have anonymity online anymore?
Yeah, I think it's a bit... I mean, obviously, you know, her personal story is very affecting, and I think it will help people, you know, to hear the issues. Because we hear issues around mental health, but we don't often hear in detail about suicidal ideation, which is that people having thoughts about suicide, not necessarily having a detailed plan to do it. So I think that's important. But then if you're going to say it's all about online harms, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you want to change? What rules do you want to introduce or you know, or alter? And I think that's the issue, that it doesn't actually go anywhere.
So because she's given us a talk in America, she's supporting a charity, all very noble. So the suicidal... It was because of what she was reading about herself online. Is that what she said?
Well, I think she thinks it because of the whole structure, really, of what she went through.
What did she go through?
About herself. Well, you know, she went. She thinks she's been through trial by tabloids. Others would disagree.
That again.
Emma.
That again.
I don't often agree with Meghan Markle. In fact, I never agree with Meghan Markle. Good. But actually, on this, I'm reaching a point where I think the anonymity online and the abuse and the vitriol and the violence and the threats that you can fling at people online is actually really getting too much. And I think that it is dangerous. And I do think that when you receive really hateful, blasphemous messages from people, and it's always the be kind, the kind of hate mob, the kind of, well, we know who we're talking about. They're almost 99.9% anonymous. And I think we do need to look at that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, 12:51 is the time, and the American pop superstar, Tom, Taylor Swift, will perform in London tonight. This comes after 3 of her planned concerts in Vienna had to be cancelled last week because police unearthed plans for a suspected terror attack.
Well, the sold-out show will see 90,000 fans making their way to Wembley. So if you see lots of people wearing cowboy boots and what's known as friendship bracelets in the capital today, that'll be why.
Yes, but the question remains, are Swifties going to be kept safe? Should we find out more from GB News reporter and avid Swiftie, so I hear, Adam Cherry. Adam, what have you found out for us?
Yeah, that's right. Avid Swiftie indeed, Emily. Look, there's lots of people here already. It's a great atmosphere. Obviously, there are elevated security concerns because of those cancelled gigs in Vienna. So traditionally, during this tour, lots of fans who don't have tickets gather outside the venue and sing along throughout the evening. You can't do that tonight. Then security won't allow anyone to congregate outside. It's ticketed fans only. It's one small bag per concert attendee, and everything is going to be searched. But apart from that, it's business as usual. The show goes on. I have acquired one of these friendship bracelets, which I'm very happy about. It's my first one. It says debut, so that's very kind. I've been speaking to people all morning, and frankly, everyone is just looking forward to a good show. I don't think the unfortunate events in Vienna are overshadowing tonight at all, to be honest.
Calling them friendship bracelets, they're Swiftie bracelets.
Are they?
Yes, they're Swiftie bracelets. You're supposed to exchange them with each other, aren't you?
Well, Adam, clearly because people aren't allowed to gather and sing, it seems that it's been a bit of a cruel summer for some of these fans, but there's a big blank space behind you because those people couldn't gather. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought this to be the case. Perhaps we just need to tell everyone here, you need to calm down.
Tom, you're burning through all of my puns here. What am I meant to do? I already said guilty as sin to Andrew and Bev. I don't know anymore. Look what you made me
just
do.
Shake it off.
There's one. There's one. Oh, nice work. Yeah, brilliant.
Shake it up. Oh, brilliant. Adam, thank you so much for being there outside Wembley Stadium. I'm very jealous, actually. I would love to have gone to that concert. But alas, I don't have any tickets. But we move on. We move on.
Absolutely, lots more to come on today's programme, not least returning to our top story, crime. Yes, 26 convictions on average needed to bang up a burglar, 5 to make sure someone who's committed sexual assault actually goes to prison. What on earth is going on in our criminal justice system? We'll be finding out after this.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey there, here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be some decent sunny spells around today, but also some blustery winds and a few showers in the north. And there is a spell of rain pushing its way southeastwards. That's because of a frontal system that's currently marching across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England, already having brought quite a bit of rain this morning and will continue to do so as it gradually makes its way across the country through the rest of today. But like I said, some sunny spells for many of us, especially across southern, eastern parts of England, and generally feeling pretty warm here. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius, a bit fresher than this further north and west. northwest, even though there will be some sunny spells and just a few showers across parts of Scotland. Now, as we head through this evening, that rain is going to continue to make its way southeastwards, but it will have cleared away from much of Scotland, and so here it is just going to be a mixture of sunny spells and some showers as we go through the end of the day. Also, a largely dry picture across much of Northern Ireland, with that rain having cleared through and only 1 or 2 showers here. Much cloudier, wetter story, though, across much of England and Wales as that front gradually makes its way southeastwards, but still clinging on to some fine weather across parts of the southeast for a little while longer. But that rain is going to push its way through as we go overnight, and it could actually invigorate a little bit more, so some heavy rain possible across the far southeast through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Elsewhere, we will have dry and clear weather for many places, and so it could turn a little fresh for some of us. Temperatures in some rural spots could drop into mid-single figures. A bit of a wet start then possible across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but that rain should quickly clear away, and then otherwise it's looking like a pretty fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, just some blustery showers to watch out for, particularly towards the northwest of Scotland, but most places avoiding these, and temperatures relatively similar to today. Again, we're looking at highs in the mid-20s. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time, did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of August. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Soft touch Britain. Career criminals with over 100 convictions are spared jail as the government cracks down on keyboard warriors. Could we be slapping the wrong wrists?
the end of the line. The government caves into train driver pay demands, offering a 15% pay rise. This could spell the end of chaotic negotiations, but at what cost? And
there are security fears with this Taylor Swift concert going ahead in Wembley Stadium tonight. Lots and lots of resources to make all the Swifties there safe. It's quite easy to solve an industrial dispute if you're willing to bung people a bit of cash.
All it takes is a few billion quid.
A few billion quid, sorted. Easy, easy.
It is such a bizarre situation where we have perhaps some of the most antiquated working practices of any industry on the trains. You know, the kind of contracts that train drivers have. It doesn't recognise it's a 7-day-a-week industry.
Yeah, they get overtime if they work at the weekend.
I mean, it is extraordinary. And yet, even though you'd think that... OK, let me put it like this.
Go on.
Along the highways of California...
OK.
Cars drive themselves.
OK.
They're not on rails. There are lots of hazards around.
There are.
And yet we have sufficient artificial intelligence to drive these cars all around those roads. It's becoming more and more common.
There's still drivers in those cars, though, aren't there?
There are,
They
but
just don't
the
touch
law
the
is
wheel.
they have to sit behind... Yep, but the capability is there. Do you think it would be harder or easier if there was a train on tracks going from one point to another point with literally no obstacles in the way on a defined course? How is that harder to automate?
I don't know, Tom, but then I'm not a train driver. But what I do know is that it's going to be awfully expensive. We already subsidise the rail network to the tune of £13 billion a year. On average, I believe. It's a costly business. And also this no-strings-attached approach. You know, Mark Harper, the former Transport Secretary, he said, you know, you've got to improve your productivity, you've got to make changes to your working conditions, we've got to update things a little bit if you want a pay rise. But no, the new government just have the cash.
At the risk of sounding pretty obtuse, I mean, how hard is it to drive a train?
Well, I know how you feel about train drivers.
Well, I mean... Why do we have to employ unionised employees here? Couldn't I mean some of the train drivers are on, you know, 6-figure salaries. Couldn't the government say, you know what, if you think you could do it for half the price and do just a good job, why don't you have a go?
No, you can always sign up. No, you can't, because it's so heavily unionised. Anyway, get in touch, gbnews.com/yoursay. Do you think this 15% pay rise is justified? Is it the way to end the strike action? But first, the headlines with Cameron.
Thanks, Emily. Good afternoon. It is 3 minutes past 1. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. The proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland have received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the government. But Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says there are still inequalities in the education system.
Today is about celebrating the achievements of our young people, but I do recognise that the gaps that we've seen opening up under the last Conservative government where it comes to regional differences are really stark, and that gap is widening. There is an awful lot that we need to do, and I want to make sure as Education Secretary that we break down those barriers to opportunity for our young people, that where you're from doesn't determine what you can go on to achieve in life.
The economy is continuing its recovery from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter, according to official data. The Office for National Statistics said gross domestic product increased by 0.6% between April and June. Former Conservative Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says today's figures are further proof Labour has inherited a growing and resilient economy. But Labour's Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, says the government inherited a huge financial challenge from the Tories.
The economic facts are clear. Because we have the highest debt burden that we've had for over 60 years, and we're having to spend billions and billions of pounds on debt interest to pay that off every month, and because working people have got the highest tax burden since the 1940s, people at home know, and anyone can look at the statistics, that what we inherited from the Conservatives was the worst fiscal inheritance since the Second World War.
Israel's military offensive in the Gaza Strip has killed at least 40,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 92,000 since the October 7th attacks, according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry. A new round of ceasefire talks is taking place in the Qatari capital Doha in an effort to end 10 months of fighting in the Palestinian enclave and bringing 115 Israeli and foreign hostages home. Train drivers are to vote on a new offer aimed at ending their long-running pay dispute, which has resulted in days of strike action. The ASLEF union said the offer was made in talks at the Department for Transport, which started after Labour won the general election following months of stalemate under the Conservatives. The drivers are being recommended to accept the offer, which could bring an end to industrial action and overtime bans. And sticking with trains, thousands of prosecutions for alleged fare evasion brought by train companies are set to be declared void after a judge's ruling. 4 train companies brought prosecutions against thousands of passengers using the single justice procedure, where minor offences are dealt with without defendants needing to go to court. That's despite train companies not being given permission to do so. The exact number of those affected is currently unknown, but a previous hearing heard around 75,000 people could have been prosecuted for fare evasion under the system. Drivers are being urged to avoid scanning QR codes to pay for parking following a number of scams. The RAC is advising drivers to make payments only with cash, cards or official apps. Recently, fraudsters have been placing stickers featuring QR codes on parking signs in locations across the country, taking victims to fake websites to input their card details before spending money from their accounts. Women living with breast cancer are being put at risk because of a shortage of staff who can deliver specialist scans. That's according to the Society of Radiographers, who warns that a shortage of mammographers have reached critical levels in NHS England, leading to late diagnoses and treatment delays. The government says it will tackle these issues head-on to ensure the NHS has the staff it needs to be there for all of us when we need it. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are expected to arrive in Colombia after an official invitation by the country's Vice President. It's understood Prince Harry and Meghan will focus on the impacts on the digital world of young people, the military community and female empowerment. The Duke and Duchess will also explore Colombia's history and culture. And global superstar Taylor Swift, she's closing the European leg of her Eras tour with 5 nights at London's Wembley Stadium. These are live pictures where thousands of fans are already, by the looks of it, starting to gather outside the stadium ahead of tonight's concert. It's the first time Taylor Swift's returned to the UK since paying tribute to the victims of the Southport attack last month, where 3 young girls died in a mass stabbing at a dance class featuring her music. Earlier this month, Taylor Swift was also forced to cancel 3 shows in Vienna after a suspected Islamist terror plot. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker, back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1. Now, the long-running pay dispute with train drivers could be finally about to end as they strike an expensive new pay deal with the government.
An expensive new pay deal. Well, yes, the deal, which must now be approved by members of the ASLEF union, will see train drivers receive a pay rise of 15% over 3 years.
However, whilst it has been hailed as a good deal for the taxpayer, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, says that, by the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, ministers have been accused of being a soft touch for supposedly caving in to union demands.
OK, well, to discuss this further, we're joined by GB News political editor Christopher Hope. It's amazing what you can do to end an industrial dispute, isn't it, when you bung quite a big pay offer?
Yeah, hi Tom, hi Emily. Yeah, that's the concern that the Tories have. They say there's no request here for any productivity improvements and there's no strings attached to the money, it seems, and that's the worry. Louise Haigh, she's the Transport Secretary, she says she wanted to move fast and fix things. She said the Tories were happy to see taxpayers pay the price as strikes dragged on and on. and passengers suffered. But it's hard to argue against the fact that the strikes have worked. When the ASLEF union, the train drivers, when they go out, the strike is solid across the network, and I'm someone who commutes each day in on the train. When it's the RMT, the maintenance workers, there is a skeleton, normally a skeleton service, but when the train drivers strike, there's been no way to get in for lots of commuters around the country by train. And so it does appear to have worked, frankly, to put the pressure on the government, and the new government's come in, settled it. The average pay rise for a train driver, Tom was interested in that as a future career option, I noted there, £60,000 to £70,000 a year. That's not bad. Helen Whately, she's a shadow transport secretary. She says this no-strings deal will be paid by you and me and taxpayers for years to come. Earlier, you both interviewed Tom Tugendhat. He's one of 6 MPs, Tory MPs, who wants to be the next leader of the Tory party. And he had this to say.
I think this is, again, the Labour Party feeding the union paymasters that they've always obeyed. And I'm afraid what this isn't focused on is the real need for massive investment that we need to make a commitment to in order to make sure that people, the travelling public, those people who are actually delivering the jobs and the opportunities that the British people need to survive and to deliver the greater future that we have, that they actually have the full opportunity to enjoy the services that we need. Now, that's where the challenge comes.
Now, this deal, of course, is subject to a vote of ASLEF members, but there will be those worrying about the impact on inflation. Now, inflation ticked up to 2% this in August. It should go maybe as high as 2.75% before the end of the year, then back towards 2%, 2% being the Bank of England's inflation target. And there will be a worry that when you've got these big numbers being pushed out by this new Labour government towards public sector workers, 5.5% pay rise for millions of public sector workers costing £10 billion, of course the 22% pay rise for junior doctors, when these big sums start to be felt in people's pockets, it's great for public sector workers. It may be a problem for inflation and keeping that under wraps. We'll wait and see.
It is extraordinary that so much money has been thrown about here, but perhaps more so that the Conservative Party were in power for 14 years and they still allowed unions to have such control over industries. I mean, the last time the Conservatives were in power for a considerable period of time, you saw a mass sort of ununionisation of the workforce. When Rupert Murdoch was trying to print his newspapers and all of the unionised print workers' unions would refuse to do so, or had all of these restrictive practices and tried to double the workforce and raise the pay, he moved it to Wapping and swapped out the workforce. I mean, we haven't seen that sort of innovation at all. It feels like to some extent we're going backwards when it comes to industrial relations.
Yeah, and you can't think of a better recruitment tool for being in a union than getting these big pay rises, having been on strike. They have, of course, not paid to go on strike, workers, so they are suffering from doing that. But the result is a big pay rise for train drivers, the junior doctors, public sector workers. They weren't on strike, but they've had a big pay rise as the government honoured those pay review bodies. So, yeah, a concern. I mean, even, Tom, as you know, the efforts by the government to force train operators to provide a minimum service, that was passed into law by the last government and never used by the actual train operating companies. So although there were some levers there to get the network moving better and make these strikes less effective, they weren't used by the companies themselves, were they?
Christopher, just very quickly, have you heard anything about these rumours that the Conservatives are thinking about bringing forward the end date of their leadership contest, essentially deciding who should be the boss a little bit sooner, this to reflect that the budget will be in October and they won't have a new leader by then?
Yeah, the key dates are here are October 30th, which is the date of the budget, and November the 2nd, a few days later, when we find out who is the new leader of the Tory party. Now, historically, in a March budget, you have the Tory leader, the opposition leader, responding, in this case, Rishi Sunak. The autumn statement is normally the shadow chancellor, in this case, Jeremy Hunt. Now, there's some suggestion that they may bring forward that the announcement before the October 30th by a week or so they've got the new leader to take the fight to Labour. The worry is going to be, though, is they can't select the final 2 from the 6 candidates. Of course, there'll be 4 by the party conference and then 2. They can't do that until after the party conference ends at the beginning of October. So if they bring forward the period by a week, it means you have less time for members to choose a new leader, and so it eats into the time when members, the selectorate of the party, can select the new leader. So it's mooted, and I've been trying to get hold of people from the 1922 committee and nothing yet, so I can't confirm it yet, but it will be a problem, I think, for the grassroots.
And yet, the other benefit of it might be that currently the 3rd of September, 3rd of November, is it? The conclusion date. That's just a day before the United States presidential election.
Yeah.
So perhaps giving it a bit of a week of space rather than just the day before would be would give a bit more airtime.
If you want a bit more media attention, yeah. Christopher Hope, thank you very much, our political editor there in Westminster. Now on to another topic, because dangerous career criminals, some with more than 100 convictions, are being spared jail time. Reports suggesting the amount of people with multiple convictions avoiding prison nearly tripled from 2007 to 2023.
Well, this is all at a time when the state is cracking down on rioting and violent disorder, with some controversy around sentencing for posts on social media during those nationwide riots.
Well, Charlie Peters is in the studio with us to tell us more. So what exactly do these statistics, this data show?
Well, it's comprehensive data from the Ministry of Justice, compiled by Tory MP Neil O'Brien through parliamentary questions. You've run out just now a couple of the quite stunning statistics from this analysis, but here's another. Offenders with more than 50 previous convictions have been spared jail in more than 50,000 cases since 2007, really laying bare so much of the so-called soft-touch justice that's been a significant part of our national conversation in the last few weeks. Even Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has said that soft-touch justice has led many criminals to feel as though there are no consequences to crime. And what Neil O'Brien's uncovered, that Tory MP, he's found several different offences where the number of times you have to be convicted for them is quite high before you are finally jailed. Now, for robbery, it's 14.5 previous convictions before you're jailed. Someone jailed for burglary typically has to have an average of 26 prior convictions for any offence. Assaulting a police officer, a serious crime in any jurisdiction, it's 19.6 convictions on someone's criminal record before they're sent away. Possession of an offensive weapon, 14 convictions. Theft, 26. Sexual assault, 5 convictions. Now, in light of all this, some comparisons are being drawn to the current sentencing regime and the procedures in our criminal justice system with regards to these riots. The CPS has made over 400 charges related to the nationwide disorder. Just in the last half hour, I've had a statement from Merseyside Police confirming the 42nd person to be charged in relation to the disorder in Southport. Now, the majority of those offences are violent disorder. The second most common is possession of an offensive weapon. But there have now been several, I think, quite controversial cases involving social media. I want to take you to the case of Julie Sweeney. Now, she is a carer for her husband, and on Facebook she wrote that a mosque needed to be blown up with the adults inside. She's been jailed for 15 months for that post. Now, it is a reprehensible comment in a Facebook group that was swiftly deleted, but other members in that 1,000-strong group saw it and reported it to Cheshire Police. Now, when she was jailed a couple of days ago, she wiped away tears and thanked the judge for the sentence, appearing via video link from a jail nearby. But that 15-month sentence is her first ever conviction and sentencing, which does go into contrast against the, say, 19 different convictions you might need before you're jailed for assaulting a police officer. And that's a crime of thought and writing, not intent. The maximum penalty for sending a grossly offensive or threatening communication is 5 years. So judges have quite a lot of leeway in what they can do with culpability and other aggravating or mitigating factors. But it is still quite stark, and it does show that when the political will is there, sentences can be stronger. Perhaps an evidence of fashion catching up with these cases. Another one I'd like you to draw attention to, John Cann. He was involved in the disorder in Plymouth. He's a repeat offender. 26 convictions for 170 offences. He was caught on camera waving his prosthetic leg while engaging with protesters down in the southwest. He threw a missile, a firework, and was jailed for it. He had a long list of previous convictions. Here, you might say, there is someone who should go to jail. But here's a concerning remark that the judge made in the sentencing. The judge at Plymouth Crown Court said, "You have no right whatsoever to say who should or should not be in this country." Well, he does have that right. We all have that right. Political speech and opinion is protected in the law here. Potentially a sign, I think some analysts might say, of political speech seeping into assessments and sentences being delivered by Crown Courts in this country at the moment. I think that's a very troubling statement. We've also had another sentencing for political and offensive messaging online. Lee Dunn, a man from Whitehaven in the northwest, he works at Sellafield, the nuclear power plant. He's pleaded guilty to one offence. He admitted sending a message that was grossly offensive or indecent, obscene or menacing character at the end of July after the Southport disorder. He shared 3 Facebook posts. They depicted Asian men on a beach and he captioned them coming to a town near you. 8 weeks in jail for that. As far as I can tell, no prior convictions. So with Neil O'Brien uncovering the number of convictions you might need to be sent to jail for robbery, burglary, assaulting a police officer or indeed sexual assault, those are quite high. But for writing offensive messages online, well, it seems you might just need 1 conviction.
Fascinating, the way you put it all together there for us. Very interesting, and indeed, I think it is fair to make these types of comparisons. When you see that so many crimes you have to be convicted of multiple times to see the inside of a jail.
Well,
very striking.
What's the law behind this?
Yeah.
Why are the nuts and bolts of our legal system working like this? Let's ask the barrister, Sam Fowles. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Hi there.
What is going on here? Why does it seem that some speech offences seem to carry harsher sentences than the average for burglary or assault or sexual assault or even possessing an offensive weapon?
Well, the blunt point is that mass murder is worse than breaching a RASBO. And so the majority of those cases that are the largest number of convictions that are cited by the Telegraph are for breaches of an ASBO. And the first case cited by your colleague was an encouragement to blow up a mosque with multiple people in it. That's mass murder. I think actually she was incredibly fortunate in her sentence, because she could have also been convicted under the Terrorism Act, and that carries a tariff of 15 years.
So, Sam, do you think that would... Because obviously incitement in any jurisdiction, incitement to violence is not considered protected, even under the First Amendment of the United States of America.
Correct.
Do you think that comment would have carried a sentence in the United States?
I think it potentially could have. But again, the point I was going to make is that where people of Arab origin who are encouraging Islamic terrorism have made similar comments, they have received much longer sentences. Now, if I was in sentencing or arguing for the sentence, I would, of course, be saying that this is one case. She's only made one post. And whereas in many cases where you're getting sentences of 9, 10 or up to 15 years, those are for more than one post. And even if it's 4 or 5 posts, that's still a big difference, right? But to get 15 months when you could have been charged with something that gets you up to 15 years, I think she will be very happy to have got away with that on that one.
OK, well, let's take the conversation away from that particular case, because a lot of people concerned that it's taking multiple convictions for a criminal to see the inside of a jail cell for very serious crimes. I mean, according to this information from the Parliament website, this has been put together by Neil O'Brien and in the Telegraph today, for burglary. According to this, the average number of convictions before the criminal is jailed is over 25, 26. The same with robbery, it's 14. Criminal damage, 18, 17, 18. Assault on a police officer, 19. This is quite incredible. What is this about? Is this about a soft criminal justice system? Is this about a lack of spaces in jails? I mean, what do you imagine it's about here?
I think I'd be surprised if it were about a soft criminal justice system, because what was left out of the Telegraph's report on this was that we have also currently there are more people in jail in the UK than at any point in our history.
But there might be more criminals, Sam. There might be more criminals.
And clearly there are more criminals. But I think that's really important context. And I also think, this is my final health warning, it's quite dangerous to look at averages like this, because it's the law that every sentence has to be dealt with individually and according to the individual's particular circumstances. So there are certainly no judges going, well, that's 14 convictions, time for you to go to jail. That conversation will never be had in a court.
Although it is in the United States, of course. You've got the 3 strikes and you're out rule in the US, which was correlated with a drop in violent crime.
And yet, in the UK, when they've looked at sentencing for knife crime, they've found that actually putting people in jail for things like knife crime increases the chances that they're going to commit further crimes.
Well, we might be safer for a year or two.
And I mean, also the statistic you've just cited also was taken over a period where the economic circumstances of a lot of people improved. So the decline in violent crime could have been because people were getting richer and their lives were getting better.
Yeah.
So there's
also interesting to note demographics as well. That fewer men between the age of 16 and 30 is massively correlated with less violent crime.
I think people just want to know that if you commit a robbery, you're going to go to jail. I really think it is as simple as that for public trust in the criminal justice system. If you commit a violent offence and you're convicted of it, you should go to jail. That's as basic as most people will see this. Sam, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry, I've been told we need to leave it there, but it's been great to
wanted to talk about the rape statistics, because they're even worse.
Absolutely horrific. We'll speak again.
Yeah, Sam, we'll have to have you back. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots coming up. We're going to be live in Port Talbot after this.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Fatima's UK campaign, Children and Young People Matter. Because I actually run a campaign, and my ministry today is about looking after children in the care system and improving their life outcomes. You know, for me, I had a difficult start to my childhood, and I will never forget it. I mean, I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I instantly understand the importance of giving our young children and young people the opportunity to also, have good life outcomes. So Fatima's UK campaign is all about that. It's a summit next year. Eamon, I hope you're going to come.
No, and we've talked about this before, and certainly, I mean, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's marvellous what you're doing, and that's why, when you think about children, and children are so close to you, and you look at that horror that happened in Southport yesterday, I mean, things like that
exactly.
will really hit home hard.
Well, children are the innocent ones, aren't they, Eamon? And this is what we look at when you think they're the future. We've got to start to put them back at the top. And it's a travesty when we see things like that, Omar, that happen. Children are the ones that are impacted. And, it's, for me, really important to be able to do the best we can and looking after their future. And so hopefully, I'm going to the Pyrenees in September, Eamon. That's my next challenge, the Bay of Biscay, from France to Spain and back. And hopefully people can go online, fatimascampaign.com, and give generously to help make a difference to these young people's lives. Because, as I say, children are the future.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:30. Emily's eating. What is it, an apple?
I've got a bit of apple in my mouth. I'm terribly sorry. How rude.
Do you know what? I've been having jammy Dodgers. So,
I'm so sorry. I get a little bit hungry. It is lunchtime.
This is the problem with presenting a programme from the hours of 12 until 3. You're just hungry. You're hungry the whole time. Anyway.
I'm terribly sorry.
The British government is set to announce the release of £13.5 million to support businesses and workers affected by the Tata Steel company's decision to transition to greener steelmaking.
Yes, so the support for workers forced to leave their jobs will range from guaranteed interviews to additional training and coaching.
Well, let's cross to Port Talbot now and speak to GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, what's behind this deal?
Well, essentially, last September, Tata Steel announced that it would be closing its 2 major furnaces and replacing it with 1 electric furnace. Now, that put 2,000 jobs at risk. Tata Steel said it was necessary for them to meet the government's net zero targets. And actually, the Tata Steel plant here is responsible for an astonishing 2% of all of the UK's carbon emissions. So in order to meet the net zero target that the Prime Minister set out, the previous Prime Minister set out, Tata Steel had to potentially risk 2,000 jobs. Now, obviously, that did not go down well in this town. This town is completely dominated by the steelworks, and pretty much every single person here is affected in some way. The previous government, the Conservative government, announced a £100 million package of support for both workers affected by the change and the companies which were reliant on Tata Steel, so companies in the supply chain, many of which are local. The place where we are now, where the Secretary of State for Wales will be doing a speech later, both is employing people who've lost their jobs from Tata Steel and also accepts material from Tata Steel in their supply chain. So it's a perfect example of one company which has been affected. Previous government promised £100 million to the people who are affected, but nearly a year on, none of that money has yet been spent. The £13.5 million today that Joe Stevens, the Welsh Secretary, is promising is the first of that money which will be spent, and it will go to all sorts of people who are affected by the closure of the steel plant, so workers, contractors and the small businesses which claim Tata Steel as a client. But this is by no means the end of the road. The idea of the loss of potentially 2,800 jobs in this town is obviously still pretty shocking. And there are union members, some of whom I've spoken to this morning, who say that it is just not necessary to have that many redundancies. Those unions are now in conversation with the Labour government, but obviously reaching some sort of deal is very, very difficult indeed. Tata Steel has already made this plan. They say this plan is absolutely necessary if they're to meet the net zero targets that the government has set, and trying to find a way to give jobs to all of these people will be really difficult, although it does sound as though it might be possible that the government and the unions will be reaching a deal relatively soon. For now, there is a big package of money for these workers, contractors and businesses, and in the future it could just be that not so many jobs are lost after all.
Well, interesting stuff there, Olivia. Thank you for bringing us the very latest. We'll be back with you a little bit later in the programme.
We will indeed. Now, we've got lots more coming up in today's show, including drumroll, the huge news, the ginormous news that Molly May Hague and Tommy Fury set social media ablaze yesterday because they announced they're ending their relationship after 5 years together. They were engaged only 1 year ago.
Who?
Who? Everyone at home knows who they are, surely.
Not a clue.
Love Island star, match made in heaven, but alas, not to be. Stay tuned to learn more.
Good afternoon, it's 1:34. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. The proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the Department for Education, which also warns there are still inequalities in the system. The economy is continuing its recovery from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter. The Office for National Statistics says gross domestic product increased by 0.6% between April and June. The former Conservative Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says today's figures are further proof Labour has inherited a growing and resilient economy. But Labour's Chancellor Rachel Reeves says she has inherited more than a decade of low economic growth from the Tories. Train drivers are to vote on a new offer aimed at ending their long-running pay dispute, which has resulted in days of strike action. The ASLEF union said the offer was made in talks at the Department for Transport, which started after Labour won the general election following months of stalemate under the Conservatives. The drivers are being recommended to accept the offer, which could bring an end to industrial action and overtime bans. British Challenger 2 tanks are thought to have been used in Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia. It comes after the government's confirmed Kyiv was free to use UK weapons inside Russian territory, with the exception of Britain's powerful Storm Shadow missiles. The latest turn in the conflict has sparked concerns about a wider escalation of tensions between Russia and the West. Israel's military offensive into the Gaza Strip has resulted in the deaths of at least 40,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 92,000 since the October 7th attacks. That's according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry. A new round of ceasefire talks is taking place in the Qatari capital Doha in an effort to end 10 months of fighting and bring 115 Israeli and foreign hostages home. And global superstar Taylor Swift is closing the European leg of her Eras tour with 5 nights at London's Wembley Stadium. Now, these are live pictures from outside the stadium, where thousands of fans already appear to be gathering ahead of tonight's concert. It's the first time she's returned to the UK, Taylor Swift, since paying tributes to the victims of the Southport attack last month, where 3 young girls died in a mass stabbing at a dance class featuring her music. Earlier this month, Taylor Swift was forced to cancel 3 shows in Vienna after a suspected Islamist terror plot. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hey there, here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be some decent sunny spells around today, but also some blustery winds and a few showers in the north. And there is a spell of rain pushing its way southeastwards. That's because of a frontal system that's currently marching across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England, already having brought quite a bit of rain this morning, and will continue to do so as it gradually makes its way across the country through the rest of today. But like I said, some sunny spells for many of us, especially across southern, eastern parts of England, and generally feeling pretty warm here, temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius. A bit fresher than this further north and west, even though there will be some sunny spells and just a few showers across parts of Scotland. Now, as we head through this evening, that rain is going to continue to make its way southeastwards, but it will have cleared away from much of Scotland, and so here it is just going to be a mixture of sunny spells and some showers as we go through the end of the day. Also, a largely dry picture across much of Northern Ireland, with that rain having cleared through and only 1 or 2 showers here. Much cloudier, wetter story though across much of England and Wales as that front gradually makes its way southeastwards, but still clinging on to some fine weather across parts of the southeast for a little while longer. But that rain is going to push its way through as we go overnight, and it could actually invigorate a little bit more, so some heavy rain possible across the far southeast through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Elsewhere, we will have dry and clear weather for many places, and so it could turn a little fresh for some of us. Temperatures in some rural spots could drop into mid-single figures. A bit of a wet start then possible across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but that rain should quickly clear away, and then otherwise it's looking like a pretty fine day. Plenty Plenty of sunshine around, just some blustery showers to watch out for, particularly towards the northwest of Scotland, but most places avoiding these, and temperatures relatively similar to today. Again, we're looking at highs in the mid-20s. See you later.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. There's some queues on the northbound M6 in Cumbria this lunchtime. Kendal up to T-Bay Junction 37 to 38 currently blocked. A collision causing tailbacks. Westbound M65 at Breafield Junction 12 through towards the Burnley Centre turn off Junction 11. Emergency repairs continue, so that's queuing and that's partially blocked as well. A lane shut in the West Midlands on the northbound side of the M6. It's at the turn off of Wolverhampton and Walsall Junction 10. Emergency repairs are causing delays. And the clockwise M25 at the turn-off for South Mims at Junction 23. Now, there was a collision there and the roadworks has been shifted to the hard shoulder, so all lanes open. There's a 3-mile queue, though, back towards St Albans at Junction 22. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 to 2, and now time for some gargantuan showbiz news. I'm told that Love Island superstars Molly May and Tommy Fury have broken up after 5 years together.
Devastating. Devastating.
Apparently so.
The formerly engaged couple, who share a daughter, they rose to fame after finishing as runners-up in the 5th season of the hit reality TV show, but they've gone on to make a huge amounts of money, and they seem to have quite a rather lovely life. There's the engagement photo, black and white, all beautiful. Anyway, let's find out more from showbiz journalist Julie Ann Traynor. Julie, what's the latest on this? It has shocked a lot of people. Some of our viewers will be thinking, who are they? But they are iconic.
Shall we start with that?
Yeah, start with that. Yeah.
Who are these people?
OK, so Molly May and Tommy Fury. A lot of people might be wondering who they are, but they found love on Love Island 5 years ago. And Tommy is brother with Tyson Fury, the very famous boxer. So before he even went on to the show, he already had a lot of publicity. And yes, the pair of them just hit it off. And a lot of couples crack when they come out of the villa, but they actually went from strength to strength.
And now they've got millions of followers online from all around the world and are sort of set up as this archetypal loved-up couple.
Exactly. For instance, Molly May has 8 million followers on Instagram and Tommy has over 5 million. So they're very, very popular. They just got engaged last year. They have a baby together and they have a £4 million mansion in Cheshire. So they've done very well from the show. And a lot of people have been invested in their journey right from the start. So yesterday, whenever Molly May announced that they had broken up, the internet just went into overdrive.
It did. It did, the speculation, because the statement was slightly revealing, wasn't it, from Molly May? The suggestion there that perhaps it had something to do with something that Tommy Fury may have done.
Absolutely. She sounded very angry and really hurt. She said, never in a million years did I think I'd ever have to write this, and I never imagined our story would end, especially in this way. She also added, I am extremely upset to announce that we have broken up. So I think that's very telling. And also a lot of couples, when they break up, they do a joint statement. They really sit together and it's, you know, very amicable. But this one, yes, it was Molly May who announced it first and then Tommy followed an hour later.
What did Tommy say afterwards? And an hour later is a big gap. It sounds like it wasn't coordinated.
Exactly, that's what I mean. He said something quite similar, but his was more along the lines of we and respect our privacy, while she was more or less saying respect my privacy. So it sounds to me like she's very much distancing herself from him.
But you know what? A lot of people look up to this couple. A lot of people idealise them. They've got lots of money. Molly May's got beautiful clothes. Tommy Fury's doing very well. They're a very attractive couple. They've got, you know, so much going for them. Social media isn't always as it seems, clearly, because, you know, it was only a couple of days ago in the past week that they were posting, you know, My World with a loving photo of the family, and they were at the sister's wedding with all these pictures of their loved-up engagement and everything like this. But clearly there was some things that weren't being talked about, or were, but hadn't hit the surface yet.
Yes, well, I think the cracks were starting to show from last year whenever Tommy was pictured partying with Chris Brown in Dubai and some girls. So I don't think that went down very well.
Not a great sign.
No. And she's very much a homebody. She likes to sit at home. She's very much a devoted mother. And don't get me wrong, Tommy seems like a lovely guy. But after that, then Molly was pictured without her engagement ring on some occasions.
Wow. She was, yeah.
So I think cracks have been starting to show over the last few months, and now it's just come to a head. So, and there's also a story that is broke now, sadly, that apparently Tommy cheated on her multiple times. I don't know how true that is, and she has kicked him out of her mansion. Well, their mansion.
You mean to tell me a celebrity boxer who parties in Dubai with Chris Brown might have cheated on his fiancée?
I know, well,
Oh,
it's not a nice thought. But up until then, though, they really did seem like the golden couple.
Yeah,
you know?
They did. But do you know what? And perhaps this is a bit harsh. I always thought that Molly May was perhaps too smart, too intelligent, too focused on, you know, making her way in industry, and she's had all of these brilliant jobs and things for Tommy. Tommy seemed a bit basic, perhaps.
What is her job?
Oh, she was head of creative content at Pretty Little Thing.
Yeah.
She's an influencer. She does a YouTube. She's not an idiot. She's not an idiot. She's actually smart, quite a smart cookie, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And she's a fan of Margaret Thatcher, or at least her ideas, Tom.
Well, I'm sold. I do remember actually a story about that a couple of years ago.
She said that people need to just work harder or something like that.
Right.
And everyone called her Molly Thatcher or something.
It spun out of
Molly
control, no doubt. But of course, they've got a child, and we've been looking at pictures of this. We can't forget the human tragedy here, really.
Yeah. And also, it was only as well last year that they appeared in a Netflix series called At Home with the Furies. So again, that really helped as well raise their profile with a lot of people. So it is really sad, and I do think this will affect their brand as well.
Oh yes, it absolutely will.
And it will have a knock-on effect as well to, you know, their financial aspects.
Is there any precedent here, though? Because sometimes looking at bands, when someone leaves the band, they can go off and become much, much larger by themselves. I'm thinking of Harry Styles. I'm thinking of John Lennon. I'm not necessarily putting Molly May in that category. But I mean, there is the opportunity. I mean, we're talking about her for the first time on this programme. She could actually do fairly well out of this.
She could, but I think it's different when you're a couple. It's, you know, if you're in a band, that's different. You can go on and have a solo career. But I think they were very much a unit, and everyone has watched their journey right from the start when they met, and a lot of people have followed that and fell in love with them through that. So I do think this might have an effect on their
Interesting you say that.
Popularity.
I think I disagree. I think Molly May, because she already had a YouTube. She already had lots of people following her before she went into Love Island.
Oh.
And yeah, I think she's going to step up to the plate and she'll manage just fine. But it must be a horrible shock now.
Well, it will be one to watch.
Let's see. Maybe all right.
I'm not sure I'm going to dive straight back into following everything about Molly May, but you know what? I'm sure you can follow it for me.
I will do. Thank you so much. Julianne Schreiner, showbiz journalist. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to our security editor because it's reported Ukraine is using British tanks to invade Russia. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes. You know the best time to go to a dentist? When? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. This is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants and things like that.
Well, I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down, but in many cases they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment?" I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected. She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, doesn't it, Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 2. Now, today marks day one of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's tour of Colombia.
Yes, the pair are going to spend the visit meeting notable leaders and women's rights activists in the South American country on what's been called a quasi-royal trip.
But it's definitely not a royal trip. It's a quasi... Yeah, anyway.
Definitely not one.
No, we wouldn't
Could be clear. We can't be clear enough.
Absolutely. There's literally nothing royal about it at all. Well, joining us now is the former royal editor at The Sun, Duncan Larkham. Duncan, this is a curious trip because, of course, it comes the week that Prince Harry says he couldn't visit the UK because the UK is too dangerous.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, this trip raises so many questions. It's hard to fit them all in. I mean, he says he can't come to Great Britain with Meghan because it's too dangerous without his royal security, and yet he goes to a country that I think I'm right in saying the Foreign and Commonwealth Office warned British subjects not to go there.
Oh, well, there you go. He believes suddenly that Colombia is a safer country than this one. Duncan, I also want to ask about this chief of staff that left after about 3 months from Meghan and Harry's enterprise. Yeah. There seems to be lots of rumours about why he actually left. What are they?
Well, there are sort of suggestions that it just basically doesn't look good. I think The Sun tallied up that there have been 18 key members of staff that have left the employment of the Sussexes since they were back in the UK. And I mean, it just does not look good, very good at all. Is it because of the working schedules of Meghan? Is it just because these people get better offers and decide to work somewhere else? In this silence, sort of people make up their own mind exactly what it's all about. So it's not a good look whatsoever.
Now, it is very curious that this was an invitation of Colombia. I don't think Colombia often invites Hollywood celebrities to come and visit the country and roll out the red carpet for, which is why it sort of seems like they are treating these non-royals as senior royals.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Every time there's an official royal tour, an overseas visit, always it's at the request of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office because of diplomatic soft diplomacy. There's a reason why that's got to happen. Harry and Meghan have effectively just decided to accept invitations. They went to Nigeria earlier this year. Again, that had nothing to do with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. It had nothing to do with their status as royals, other than they were able to be persuaded to go. And I think the question that everyone's asking is, why on earth are they there? What are they trying to achieve? What does it achieve?
That's a very good question, Duncan. We'll see what they get up to in due course, I'm sure. Duncan Larkham, thank you very much, former royal editor at The Sun. We're just going to be back in a second after the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey there, here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be some decent sunny spells around today, but also some blustery winds and a few showers in the north. And there is a spell of rain pushing its way southeastwards. That's because of a frontal system that's currently marching across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England, already having brought quite a bit of rain this morning, and will continue to do so as it gradually makes its way across the country through the rest of today. But like I said, some sunny spells for many of us, especially across southern, eastern parts of England, and generally feeling pretty warm here. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius, a bit fresher than this further north and west, even though there will be some sunny spells and just a few showers across parts of Scotland. Now, as we head through this evening, that rain is going to continue to make its way southeastwards, but it will have cleared away from much of Scotland, and so here it is just going to be a mixture of sunny spells and some showers as we go through the end of the day. Also, a largely dry picture across much of Northern Ireland, with that rain having cleared through and only 1 or 2 showers here. Much cloudier, wetter story though across much of England and Wales as that front gradually makes its way southeastwards, but still clinging on to some fine weather across parts of the southeast for a little while longer. But that rain is going to push its way through as we go overnight, and it could actually invigorate a little bit more, so some heavy rain possible across the far southeast through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Elsewhere, we will have dry and clear weather for many places, and so it could turn a little fresh for some of us. Temperatures in some rural spots could drop into mid-single figures. A bit of a wet start then possible across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but that rain should quickly clear away, and then otherwise it's looking like a pretty fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, just some blustery showers to watch out for, particularly towards the northwest of Scotland, but most places avoiding these, and temperatures relatively similar to today. Again, we're looking at highs in the mid-20s. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of August. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
The end of the line. The government caves into train driver pay demands, offering a 15% pay rise. This could spell the end of chaotic negotiations, but at what cost?
And soft touch Britain, career criminals with over 100 convictions are spared jail as the government cracks down on keyboard warriors. Could we be slapping the wrong wrists?
And it's being reported that British Challenger 2 tanks are now being used during the shock Ukrainian incursion into Russia. The first such incursion from a sovereign state since the Second World War.
Well, welcome back. There's been quite shocking statistics that we've been talking about throughout the show. Lots of you raising huge concerns about the fact that you can get multiple convictions, up to 100 in some cases, and still be spared jail. No, you won't have to, go into a cell. You won't have to be completely separated from the rest of society. You won't need to be, presumably punished in any reasonable way that one might think you should be. No, you can just get away with it. You have to show that you have been. You have to show that you've done the same crime
again and again and again
and again and again and again.
No, it does seem bonkers, but I do sort of understand the incentives where people are being told short prison sentences don't have the same effect, and it's hard to put people away for a long time because there's no bloomin' space in the prisons. In the pictures of the prisons that we were using in the menu there in the introduction, I thought that's a good-looking prison. It's symmetrical. It was a very nice picture, and I realised it's because it was built over 100 years ago, and we really haven't built any prisons in recent decades. Not many at all. And it's so necessary to do so. Our prison estate is crumbling, and I wonder how much of that is feeding into these decisions to go for non-custodial sentences that frankly don't keep people safe.
Yeah, or it could be judges who decide to be lenient for one reason or another. Or a combination of the two, most likely. But, I mean, it's rather worrying that you've got people with multiple convictions, presumably roaming as free people in our society and going on to commit further crimes and not being thrown into jail.
Yeah, if you assault a police officer, carry out sexual assault or carry an offensive weapon, and all you have to do is pick up some litter at the end of it, it's not the biggest... I think most people would want to pick up litter they walk past in the street anyway. At least you're a decent person, you would.
And, of course, the new government, they've banged up a lot of people following this recent disorder, of course. Fine, good, in many cases. But we see the system work very swiftly when it needs to. gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch, but we're going to get the headlines with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Emily. Good afternoon. It is 3 minutes past 2. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. And we've got some breaking news to bring you now. A 15-year-old boy has become the first to be charged with the more serious offence of rioting in relation to disorder in Sunderland on the 2nd of August. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service. The boy from Sunderland will appear at South Teesside Youth Court today, where he will be asked to enter a plea. More information on that as we get it. Meanwhile, the proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the government. But Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says there are still inequalities in the education system.
Today is about celebrating the achievements of our young people, but I do recognise that the gaps that we've seen opening up under the last Conservative government where it comes to regional differences are really stark, and that gap is widening. There is an awful lot that we need to do, and I want to make sure as Education Secretary that we break down those barriers to opportunity for our young people, that where you're from doesn't determine what you can go on to achieve in life.
The economy is continuing its recovery from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter, according to official data. The Office for National Statistics said gross domestic products increased by 0.6% between April and June. Labour's Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, says the government inherited a huge financial challenge from the Tories, but Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Laura Trott says the economic growth is thanks to previous Conservative policy.
These are really positive GDP figures this morning, but the only person who's not out celebrating them is the Chancellor. You know, Rachel Reeves is sitting in the Treasury fuming because this is yet more data to undermine her narrative that the economic inheritance was bad, and she can no longer use that as a pretext for the tax rises that she was planning all along.
British Challenger 2 tanks are thought to have been used in Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia. It comes after the government confirmed Kyiv was free to use UK weapons inside Russian territory, with the exception of Britain's powerful Storm Shadow missiles. The latest turn in the conflict has sparked concerns about a wider escalation of tensions between Russia and the West. Israel's military offensive in the Gaza Strip has killed at least 40,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 92,000 since the October 7th attacks. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry. A new round of ceasefire talks is taking place in the Qatari capital Doha in an effort to end 10 months of fighting in the Palestinian enclave and bring 115 Israeli and foreign hostages home. Train drivers are to vote on a new offer aimed at ending their long-running pay dispute, which has resulted in days of strike action. The ASLEF union said the offer was made in talks at the Department for Transport, which started after Labour won the general election following months of stalemate under the Conservatives. The drivers are being recommended to accept the offer, which could bring an end to industrial action, as well as overtime bans. Drivers are being urged to avoid scanning QR codes to pay for parking following a number of scams. The RAC is advising drivers to make payments only with cash, cards or official apps. Recently, fraudsters have been placing stickers featuring QR codes on parking signs in locations around the country, taking victims to fake websites to input their card details before spending money from their accounts. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, they are expected to arrive in Colombia after an official invitation by the country's Vice President. It's understood Prince Harry and Meghan will focus on the impact of the digital world on young people, the military community and female empowerment. The Duke and Duchess will also explore Colombia's history and culture. And global superstar Taylor Swift is closing the European leg of her Eras tour with 5 nights at London's Wembley Stadium. Now, these are hopefully live pictures where thousands of fans are expected to attend the concert later. It's the first time she's returned to the UK, Taylor Swift, since paying tributes to the victims of the Southport attack last month, where 3 girls died in a mass stabbing at a dance class featuring her music. Earlier this month, Taylor Swift was also forced to cancel 3 shows in Vienna after a suspected Islamist terror plot. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 2. Now, could the rail strikes finally be reaching the end of the line? The long-running pay dispute with train drivers could finally be about to end as the ASLEF union strikes a new pay deal with the government.
See what we did there? The deal, which must now be approved by members of the union, the ASLEF union, will see train drivers receive a pay rise of 15% over 30 years. Taking the average...
3 years.
3 years. What did I say?
30.
Oh, I'm sorry. 3 years.
If only.
Yes, that wouldn't be very generous over 30 years. Should we get more from our political editor, who knows the numbers, perhaps a little better than I do? Our political editor, Christopher Ho. 15% over 3 years, not 30 years. Is this what they were actually demanding, or is this a completely new offer that the government came up with?
It goes towards what they were demanding. That's worth £60,000 rise, forgive me, from 60,000 for the average driver to 70,000. Criticism from the Tory party, no strings. But you heard from Louise Hay, she's the Transport Secretary. She says she wanted to move fast and fix things when she became Transport Secretary just 5 short weeks ago. The Tories, she says, were happy to see taxpayers pay the price as strikes dragged on and passengers suffered. And believe me, passengers did suffer. The ASLEF strikes were really hard. They were mainly solid. When they went on strike, often commuters couldn't get around the country. I certainly felt that living outside London, getting to work. So this is a good news for commuters, people trying to get around the country. Maybe not so good news for those who worry about how public money is being spent. The Tories are saying, Helen Whately, she says, Shadow Transport Secretary, saying that this is a no-strings deal that will be paid for by taxpayers and passengers in the future because there's no demand to improve working time or anything. All the strings that were attached there by the Tory party, and that's why the Tory government, that's why there's no deal. They haven't been added in. We heard earlier from Tom Tugendhat. He's one of the Tory leadership challengers. He was asked about this deal by you both on this programme.
Look, I think this is, again, the Labour Party feeding the union paymasters that they've always obeyed. And I'm afraid what this isn't focused on is the real need for massive investment that we need to make a commitment to in order to make sure that people, the travelling public, those people who are actually delivering the jobs and the opportunities that the British people need to survive and to deliver the greater future that we have, that they actually have the full opportunity to enjoy the services that we need. Now, that's where the challenge comes.
Tom Tugendhat, one of the 6 candidates for the Tory party leadership. This comes after a big deal for junior doctors. As you know, 22% pay rise. Millions of public sector workers getting 5.5% pay rise, more than inflation, costing us £10 billion. Fears of tax rises, again, from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves today in an interview looking into the October budget. And don't forget, we have got inflation starting to tick up again from 2%, could be towards 2.75% by the end of the year. And the concern is that giving big pay rises to public sector workers can be inflationary. So worries here, and no guarantees of any improvement in working practice either from the train drivers.
70,000 quid for pressing doors open, doors closed. Nice work if you can get it. Well, Chris Hope, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through this extraordinary story.
Yeah, I do wonder when we're going to get all the efficiencies Labour spoke about. All these efficiencies that are going to save us billions and billions of pounds. Anyway, let's get the thoughts of travel correspondent at The Independent, Simon Calder. Simon, thank you very much indeed. 15%, is that the right approach?
Well, look, if you take the point of view of the Union and the Labour Party, it absolutely is. This doesn't actually keep up with inflation during the years, well, actually pretty much since 2019. You've seen inflation roughly 24% in that time, and the pay rise is going to work out at 15%. So this is always what the union was after, a clean, as they called it, no strings deal, whereas absolutely a whole series of transport secretaries and prime ministers said the only way we can possibly afford to give you any increase at all is if you absolutely radically change your working conditions. Labour said no need to do any of that, have the money, get back to work. Now, I'm talking to you here both as a passenger who for the past 3 years has seen my rail ticket be a bit of a lottery ticket, 1 day in 7. has been affected by train drivers' strike action and overtime bans. And therefore, I'm delighted to be able to plan more than 2 weeks ahead and know that at least a strike won't be getting me. Also, though, as a taxpayer, I'm thinking, OK, so we're collectively paying £240 per second to keep the railways running. There'll be loads of GB News viewers who never go near a train who are thinking, how much am I paying? And there is a serious problem where revenue on the railway is too low, costs are too high, and unreliability is, I'm afraid, pretty lousy. If I can just give you an example, just after they were shaking hands on this deal last night in Department for Transport in Westminster in London, just up the road at Charing Cross Station, thousands of commuters, their trains have been cancelled because of a signal failure. That was a Network Rail issue. Then we got an announcement from Northern Trains saying, you want to travel on the trains in the northwest of England on Sunday? Ooh, be very worried about short notice cancellations. And this morning's the 6:33 from London to Leeds cancelled because of staff shortage. Now, I give you all of those examples because all of those organisations are state-owned already. And the idea that suddenly, as the Labour Party has been saying, we're going to nationalise everything, then it will all be fine. Well, I'm afraid, although Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, has fixed this pretty quickly, it's going to be very slow and very painful to get the railways to a state where people will actually want to come back to them. And you need people coming back to them because, of course, revenue has collapsed since COVID.
Yes, I think a third fewer passengers now regularly on the railways, which is why the Tories wanted these efficiencies, which now haven't happened. But Simon, you mentioned all of those problems that have prevented people travelling in the last few days, perhaps due to a lack of investment updating that infrastructure. I wonder, are we going to swap one problem for another? Yes, we'll have fewer days lost to strikes now, but maybe if that money's going to pay £70,000 per driver rather than upgrade the signalling or improve the rolling stock or whatever else it is, we're going to get more days lost to travel for other reasons.
A really, really good, cogent argument. Now, I think what the passenger wants to see is absolutely, pay the rail drivers, get them back working, stop this dispute. Although if you're watching in Scotland, well, first of all, lucky you for living in such a beautiful country, but be warned that there's going to be a ballot on industrial action by train drivers because this dispute's only entirely England. You are going to see, I hope, a gradual improvement. And yes, absolutely, you're both right. We need huge amounts of investment in the railway. Now, we were getting that in the shape of HS2, very controversial, I know. That got scrapped last October by Rishi Sunak. He also, by the way, incentivised people switching from rail to air by cutting air passenger duty on all kinds of on domestic flights. And so, therefore, it's been a real problem in terms of getting the right get trains back on track. This is going to go a small way, but there really has to be a very, very serious conversation between the government, between the unions, the rail companies, Network Rail, to get things looking sensible. And that is going to include radical reform of working arrangements. And the unions have got used to a couple of things. First of all, yes, they will make changes, but they expect those to be paid for and consolidated into their pay. And secondly, they think that ultimately they will win every strike because the railways are too big.
Well, exactly. I mean, if I was a union boss, I'd be thinking, well, 3 years' time after this pay deal's over, I'll do the same again. Won't have any strings attached that time either, and everything will just be lovely for me and my train drivers. Anyway, thank you so much, Simon. We'll have to leave it there. We'll speak again, though, travel correspondent at The Independent. Now, we do have a Your Say here, and I believe it's for my co-presenter, sat next to me.
Goodness, I'm surprised about it. OK.
Mike says, to Tom Harwood, all we do is open a door. All you do is read an auto cue! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
I am very interested to see what the actual role of a train driver is.
Well, you should probably do that before you talk about it.
No, I'm very interested to see, because I know that tube drivers, for example, do operate the doors, and on many lines, the tubes are completely able to be automated.
Right.
We see this on the Docklands Light Railway.
Right.
And it's only because of union action that drivers sit in there and drive these trains that are perfectly capable to be driven automatically. Now, I know that artificial intelligence is quite good these days.
Do you think it's time for him to read the auto cue?
But I'm not entirely sure that newsreaders or indeed interviewers and all the other roles of this job could be completely automated in the way that train drivers probably could.
I don't know. It's a challenge for someone out there. We can have a little AI Tom doing it all for us.
Would there be any difference?
Would there be any difference? I don't know. Anyway, in more serious matters, British tanks are now being used in Russia.
Yes, the UK government confirmed Kiev was free to use donated weapons, including Challenger 2 tanks, in its invasion. So let's speak to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, about this. There were huge concerns about the repercussions of British weaponry used on Russian soil.
Yes, but the British government is quite clear there has been no change in policy. The policy is that Ukraine has the right to self-defence. That includes going after logistics and bases that might be planning to or involved in directly attacking
This is the line
Ukraine.
from the government, though. But is this not them trying to smooth over what has been a pretty audacious thing from the Ukrainians, calling the bluff of just about everyone? I mean, the 75 villages that the Ukrainians have taken...
82.
The 82 now. My data's out of date. The 82, they really are advancing, aren't they? The 82 villages that the Ukrainians have now taken, they're not all involved in logistics and preparations for attacks. Clearly, the British government's in favour of this incursion from the Ukrainians. It seems like an audacious and probably quite a positive move in this war that had been static. But is it really credible to say, oh, we've always been fine with this?
I'm sure that the government has taken legal advice on this, and the operation into this area, the Kursk region of Russia, is aimed at going after those logistics and bases that are involved in attacking Ukraine, and as such they believe that they're justified. And of course, on the way to doing that, they are advancing through and capturing settlements. 82, as I said. The very latest is that President Vladimir Zelensky has confirmed that the town of Sudska, which is a town of about 6,000 people, just 65 miles southwest of the regional capital, Kursk city. So that just shows you just how far they are advancing. That is now under Ukrainian control as well. And it's deeply embarrassing for President Putin of Russia, who does not appear to have any answer to what Ukraine is doing at the moment. It's not that easy very rapidly to secure the defences in place to stop this advance, given that he has committed so many hundreds of thousands of troops to the main battle against Ukraine, of course in the Donetsk region, and of course in the south and east of Ukraine as well.
Will the UK government be privy to Ukraine's military strategy here?
To an extent, but you know the battleground decisions are being made by Ukrainian commanders in conjunction with the political leaders in Kyiv. So I'm sure there are military liaison officers who are, if not on the ground, then are fairly closely connected with those counterparts in Ukraine. But I think it's very interesting the fact that we have these Challenger 2 tanks now operating on Russian soil, British-supplied tanks, main battle tanks that are very effective. I mean, we've moved now to developing the Challenger 3, which is the new generation. But even so, the Challenger 2 is a very effective fighting machine. The UK gave Ukraine, donated 14 of these tanks, and you'll remember at the time we were the first nation to give them battle tanks, and that pushed other nations forward into doing that, including Germany, other European countries who provided the Leopard 2 and Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine, as well as, of course, the US providing the Abrams tanks.
We're looking at our donated tanks on the screen now. They do seem like they go at quite a pace, and I wonder. I'm starting to think, why on earth didn't Ukraine do this before? For a year, they've been stuck with static lines, trench warfare, and they've learned that they can just go around the edge.
Yes, because, I mean, it's clearly the last thing, really, that the Russians were preparing for. They thought that Ukraine was just busy enough and had all of its attention devoted to trying to prevent the Russian incursion into its territory. But actually taking the fight to Russia clearly has taken the Russians by surprise. It will take them, as we said, some significant time to be able to muster troops in that area to fight an effective defence. And by then, maybe Ukraine have withdrawn anyway, because they've got some valuable troops there, including elite troops from the 82nd Air Assault Brigade who operate these Challenger 2 tanks, and that's why we know and are aware that Challenger 2 tanks are fighting in that area as well. Now, what they're not using are the longer range weapons. So while the UK is saying it's OK to go after these targets and logistics that are targeting Ukraine, if it involves attacking deep into Russia with Storm Shadow missiles and the like, we're not willing to go quite that far yet. You never know, that might change.
But this is quite far. This is quite far. Thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. Let us know what you make of that. gbnews.com/your say.
Well, from military drones to civilian drones, how would you feel if your Amazon parcel were delivered by drone?
Well, it could soon be a reality. Prime Air receives approval to trial its services in the UK, so you could be getting your Big Mac by a drone. We're speaking to the CEO of a drone delivery company after this. Whee!
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Northern Opera Group performs rare and wonderful operas in imaginative ways, enabling audiences and artists to discover new works and composers from across opera's history. The group produces the annual Leeds Opera Festival, which combines new productions of rare operas with a wide range of talks, panel discussions, workshops and other events. 2024 marks the festival's 8th season, and it's set to offer the world a premiere of Northern Opera Group's latest commission, Sherlock Holmes and the Sign of Four, an interpretation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle 19th century mystery novel. It's the first ever opera adaptation of the enigmatic detective. The artistic director of the Northern Opera Group, David Ward, joins me now to tell us more. David, welcome to GB News. If this is the first time that Sherlock Holmes has been translated into opera, I'm imagining that may mean that it's quite difficult to do. Is that so?
It's certainly a creative challenge, yes, and we knew that when we started on the project. I mean, as you'll know, opera traditionally has been slower-paced stories, ones that relied on less kind of narrative drive and action. So our first challenge was actually how do we translate this kind of story into opera? So it's been about looking at that musical language we use, the theatrical language, and I very much hope that we have been able to find a solution to do that. Well, it first started in 2020 when we all had a lot of time on our hands, and I finally picked up the Sherlock Holmes novels to have a read. And as I was reading them, it just struck me that these could make a fantastic opera, as well as those great theatrical set pieces. You know, you've also got a wonderful kind of cast of characters that you could have on stage. I also got really interested in this idea of how do you use music to show Sherlock's internal world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 2. Now, would you be comfortable with an Amazon drone delivering your next order?
Yes, the company expects to launch the service by the end of this year. And Prime Air, that's what it's called, has received approval to trial their service in Britain, so it could be coming to you.
Well, goodness me, it's one of 6 schemes selected by the aerospace regulator in an effort to expand drone usage right across the UK.
Right, let's learn more about this. Bobby Healy has been running his drone delivery company in Dublin for the last 3 years, so we can speak to him now. Thank you very much for joining us. So you're a step ahead of Amazon on this front. Have you been running your own drone delivery company for this long? How does it actually work? And are there not some sort of health and safety hazards of having drones flying around with deliveries?
Yeah, autonomous flying robots have been real in Ireland for over 3 years now. In Dublin, we're also live in Texas, in Dallas, and soon Helsinki. So they're real. We'll be doing 2 million deliveries by the end of this year. So very, very real. So I think your listeners or viewers can expect to see Mana in the UK as well this year. It's extremely exciting. The way it works is very simple. We fly about 50 miles an hour as the crow flies directly to your house. We hover at about 20 meters, as you saw there, Amazon doing, and then we tether the product down. So we fly quite a bit higher than the Amazon drone to avoid coming too close to people. And then we literally drop the product at the speed of gravity. We slow it down just before it touches the ground. And fun fact, coffee is the #1 thing we deliver. 30% of our deliveries are cappuccinos and lattes.
I suppose you wouldn't recommend delivering glassware or anything intricate if you're dropping it.
We've delivered pints of Guinness, many pints of Guinness in pint glasses. We do have to put a lid on them, but it's a very gentle process. So while we drop it quickly out of the aircraft, after about 4 seconds, we slow it down. So you could deliver a puppy with this system. We would.
Wow. Bobby, I'm a bit confused because I thought that drones weren't allowed to be used close to residential areas or, overlooking other people. How do you get around that?
Yeah, so commercially licensed operators like we are, and we have a license for the whole of Europe and the United States. We obviously obey privacy rules, so we don't have any recording equipment. We've no way to invade anyone's privacy. We don't even know your name, your phone number, anything when we fly to you. It's a completely anonymous private service, secure, safe and quiet. So it's 1,000,000 times better than the equivalent road-based delivery where a person is knocking on your front door and delivering you a product. We deliver to your back garden and have absolutely no customer information. So it's extremely respectful of privacy.
So that's one of the other big advantages for people that are out in the middle of the day. I can't count the number of little slips that have come through. Come and pick up your parcel, go and wait in a queue. I mean, you might as well not have had it delivered.
Someone could just nick it.
Not in your back garden.
Not in the back garden, no. That clip was in the front.
That's true. That's true. Do you exclusively deliver to back gardens then? Is that how it works?
Back gardens, front gardens, roofs. We've delivered onto the roofs of cars, onto trampolines is very popular. So it doesn't matter so long as it's a private place you control and the customer decides where we deliver to. And ultimately, it's a GPS coordinate for us. We don't care what it is. So long as it's flat and inanimate, it works great. Now, our elderly customers will usually deliver to the back garden because they don't want to go out to the front door. But most people, kind of half and half, front and back garden.
I mean, Bobby, what are all these people going to do who have jobs with Deliveroo, with Amazon Delivery, with all of these different delivery companies? Drones are just going to take over. There's going to be an awful lot of job losses, or are there lots of jobs going at your place?
Yeah, quite the opposite, actually. If you think about it, our local bookstore that we power can access 250,000 customers with a 3-minute flight. So we're creating an enormous amount of jobs in the local economy by powering the small guy to do business. Our ice cream producer, our restaurants that we power, suddenly those businesses have doubled in volume. So we're a net job creator. Yes, we will remove some jobs like delivery driver jobs, but delivery driver is 6 times more likely to be involved in a road collision than any other driver. So we think that's a good thing to make the road safer and make the planet greener at the same time.
Well, Bobby, you've got an answer to every question. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a glimpse there of perhaps the future.
Yes, thank you very much, Bobby Healy, founder and CEO of Manor Drone Delivery. It's quite, I mean, it's like something out of a cyber movie.
And the thing is, so quick, I mean, I think a lot of things that we interact with every day, I mean, the fact that we can just sort of chat to AI now...
Yeah, you're the only one who does that.
OK, fair enough, that's... maybe I should get some more friends. But I mean, lots of things we interact with would have seemed mad 10 years ago, but now it is part of our lives.
Anyway, coming up, A-level results have been released across England today. I hope your children, grandchildren, you yourself did well, revealing an increase in top grades awarded, which remain above pre-pandemic levels. What's going on there?
Good afternoon, it's 2:33. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. And some breaking news to bring you. David Taylor, who is 62, has been charged with the attempted murder of a Greater Manchester police officer who was stabbed in the chest inside the high-security Frankland prison last month. That's according to Durham Police. The officer suffered critical injuries and was taken to hospital by ambulance. Following treatment, he was discharged and is now recovering at home. Taylor, formerly of Willington, will appear in court on the 3rd of September. The proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than three-quarters of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the Department for Education, which also warns there's still inequalities in the system. Well, in the last hour, a 15-year-old boy has become the first to be charged with the more serious offence of rioting in relation to disorder in Sunderland on the 2nd of August. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service. The boy from Sunderland will appear at South Teesside Youth Court today, where he will be asked to enter a plea. The economy is continuing to recover from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter. The Office for National Statistics says GDP increased by 0.6% between April and June. Conservatives claim today's figures are further proof Labour has inherited a growing and resilient economy. But Chancellor Rachel Reeves says she has inherited more than a decade of low economic growth from the Tories. Train drivers are to vote on a new offer aimed at ending their long-running pay dispute, which has resulted in days of strike action. The ASLEF union says the offer was made in talks at the Department for Transport, which started after Labour won the general election following months of stalemate under the Conservatives. The drivers are being recommended to accept the offer, which could bring an end to industrial action and overtime bans. Now, British Challenger 2 tanks are thought to have been used in Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia. It comes after the government confirmed Kyiv was free to use UK weapons inside Russian territory, with the exception of British powerful Storm Shadow missiles. The latest turn in the conflict has sparked concerns about a wider escalation of tensions between Russia and the West. And global superstar Taylor Swift, she's closing the European leg of her Eras tour with 5 nights at London's Wembley Stadium. Now, we're bringing you live pictures here of thousands of fans already there waiting for the concert, which starts later on tonight. It's the first time she's returned to the UK, Taylor Swift, since paying tributes to the victims of the Southport attack last month, where 3 young girls died in a mass stabbing at a dance class featuring her music. Earlier this month, Taylor Swift was forced to cancel 3 shows in Vienna after a suspected Islamist terror plot. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hey there, here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be some decent sunny spells around today, but also some blustery winds and a few showers in the north. And there is a spell of rain pushing its way southeastwards. That's because of a frontal system that's currently marching across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England, already having brought quite a bit of rain this morning, and will continue to do so as it gradually makes its way across the country through the rest of today. But like I said, some sunny spells for many of us, especially across southern, eastern parts of England, and generally feeling pretty warm here. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius, a bit fresher than this further north and west, even though there will be some sunny spells and just a few showers across parts of Scotland. Now, as we head through this evening, that rain is going to continue to make its way southeastwards, but it will have cleared away from much of Scotland, and so here it is just going to be a mixture of sunny spells and some showers as we go through the end of the day. Also, a largely dry picture across much of Northern Ireland, with that rain having cleared through and only 1 or 2 showers here. Much cloudier, wetter story though across much of England and Wales as that front gradually makes its way southeastwards, but still clinging on to some fine weather across parts of the southeast for a little while longer. But that rain is going to push its way through as we go overnight, and it could actually invigorate a little bit more, so some heavy rain possible across the far southeast through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Elsewhere, we will have dry and clear weather for many places, and so it could turn a little fresh for some of us. Temperatures in some rural spots could drop into mid-single figures. A bit of a wet start then possible across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but that rain should quickly clear away, and then otherwise it's looking like a pretty fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, just some blustery showers to watch out for, particularly towards the northwest of Scotland, but most places avoiding these, and temperatures relatively similar to today. Again, we're looking at highs in the mid-20s. See you later.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. There's issues for the northbound M6 in Cumbria this lunchtime. It's now closed from junction 36 to 38. That's Kirby Lonsdale up to T-Bay. Longkeys back towards Carnforth at junction 35. It's at the scene of a collision. Routes in Kendal are struggling there as traffic divert. Also on the northbound M6, this time in the West Midlands at the turn-off for Wolverhampton and Walsall, junction 10. Queuing for earlier emergency repairs. All lanes are back open though. Now the westbound M65 at Lost Hawk Hall, that's junction 1. The turn off of the M6, a lane closed on the exit slip there, looking slow. It's at the scene of an accident. And there's long queues in the roadworks on the clockwise M25. There's a broken down caravan. It's just before Godstone, junction 6, queuing back towards junction 5 for the M26.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
And it's time to say hello to Martin Daubney and find out what's coming up on his show. Martin, tell us.
Well, have the Labour Party created a super black hole? Never mind the black hole they inherited, they've created one even bigger in their first month. £500 million to their mates in the train unions, £500 million to the junior doctors, 13 billion if you factor in future pensions, and 10 billion to teachers and nurses, not forgetting £6.5 billion in hidden asylum costs that we revealed earlier this week. That adds up to a £30 billion black hole, and rising, because guaranteed, as sure as night follows day, more unions will be beating their way to the door of number 10, asking for their bag of silver. And Aldershot protests. Last week we saw a scoop of arrests, including a girl of 13. A peaceful protest took place in the area last night. The left were accusing locals of shipping in right-wingers from outside. Well, I'm going to be speaking to a local today who's got proof that it's the left who've been shipping in outsiders, including, we think, a Corbynista from London HQ, specifically and deliberately trying to antagonise locals. Plus, a dating AI app promises to weed out short men. If you're less than 6 feet tall, you're not wanted. The app will height shame you and get rid of you. I'll be asking, you know what's coming? Is it time for an app that does the same to women? Let's see your body weight. Let's see how you like being body shamed. All of that coming 3 till 6.
Martin! That is outrageous, Martin, and totally sexist.
Hang on, why is it any different from telling men that they can't be short?
Well, I don't think Patrick's... anyway, he's not 6 foot, so...
It's just a setting on a dating app.
It's just a setting on a dating app, nothing to see here. But yes, I don't think we should... None of us should catfish.
No. And I'm 6 foot. While I'm wearing shoes. Martin, we look forward to it. 3 o'clock. We're a cracking show, particularly the supermassive black hole. My favourite thing about black holes is a process called spaghettification, where if you go past the event horizon, the photon sphere outside a black hole, because there's greater gravity on one part of your body than the other, you get stretched like spaghetti.
Well, you know what? My sister did her thesis on supermassive black holes.
Amazing.
That is the technical term. So she could probably tell you even more about spaghettification.
Look forward to it.
Anyway, it's A-level results day, and 4 in 5 students have successfully got into their first choice of university. Congratulations. Hopefully many parents and teenagers will be celebrating right across England, Wales and Northern Ireland today.
So let's speak to the head teacher of LVS Ascot, Christine Cunniff. A happy day, Christine?
A very happy day. Well done to everybody today. It's a marvellous day.
Oh, well, fantastic. How were the results at your school?
Yeah, very, very good. I mean, you just never know from one year to the other. And obviously the schools received them the day before. So we spent yesterday analysing results and having a look about what our pupils have achieved. And it's just absolutely fantastic. You know, they've done so well and we're so, so proud of them.
Now, there is one bit of concern in the reporting today, which is that this year there are 5,000 more A-star grades that have been handed out than the year before. Does that mean that they're 5,000 times brighter? I don't know. I mean, is there a bit of grade inflation going on?
I would have thought it's grade inflation. Well, you'd hope not, especially after the last couple of years. But I think, you know, the children are achieving, and it's just one of those years. I mean, the overall pass rate's very similar to it has been over the last couple of years. So just because we're seeing the top end of the grades, I wouldn't see that as anything to be alarmed by. I think children achieve what they've set out to achieve, and they've worked hard.
I always hear from older relatives, though, Christine, about how in my day exams were far harder. You know, the O-level, nothing like the GCSE this time. I have actually looked at old papers from, 50 years ago, and they did seem a little bit trickier. Or do you think that's rubbish, Christine?
Well, I must admit, you're actually talking to one of those people because I'm an old O-level student. I think they're just different. I think the world's changed and you can't live in the past. We all start to talk like our mothers eventually, don't we, about what it was like in our day. We can't take away from the young people. They're doing a great job. OK, the curriculum and exams need to change a bit. Let's hope there will be some changes. But, you know, let's celebrate today for what it is.
Now, of course, A-level results day does mean lots of university choices, but also, for some families, the frenetic process of clearing. What's your advice?
So it's been a good year for getting into university, that's for sure. And you just quoted the statistics, 4 out of 5 got into their first choice. So you know, it's an amazing day. And my advice would be sure that this is the course that you want to take. Make sure that this is where your passion lies. It's very easy to get caught up in what you think you should have got caught up in before Christmas when you applied. Life changes, especially when you're at such a young age. So if you're not sure, you can always decline that place and go through clearing. You can clear up, you can clear down, you can clear in very many ways. But follow your heart, follow your passion, because it's a long time to study and it's very expensive.
Yes, and do you advise pupils to go where their passion lies, or do you talk to them about things like career progression and potential salaries, and whether that particular degree, it might be a passion, but will it, you know, get you anywhere? Do you talk in that way, or is it, you know, just do the thing you love the most?
I mean, I'm also a mum of 3 grown-up children who've all been through university as well. And, you know, we're all guilty of saying you need to do this because this is where the career progression is. You've got to guide them in the right way. You've got to guide them in the right way that's going to make they need to be happy. And I don't agree with going for uni for the sake of it, because there's some wonderful apprenticeships out now. And you've got to, it's about the individual and what they're looking for in life.
And if you're going to go and study advanced mathematics but find you hate it and then drop out after a year or two, it's not going to do that much for your employment prospects. So finding a balance, I suppose, between the two is very important.
Pick on maths.
Oh, sorry. It was the one. Maybe it's because it's the one that I didn't do.
I think it was the one you didn't like. Thank you so much, Christine Cunniff, and well done to all of your students. Head teacher of LVS Ascot School. Yes, maths wasn't for you, was it? You were probably quite good at it.
I was all right at it. I just preferred politics and history and...
A thinking man.
And English.
And English. Well, there you go. Moving on swiftly. After the break, Taylor Swift is back in town. There she is, dancing, doing her thing. She's got an extraordinary number of songs and an extraordinary number of outfits to match. Stay tuned.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, we're joined this morning by the broadcaster Paula London, who thinks we shouldn't allow flexible working, and the founder of Real Mums Club, Chrissy Powell, who thinks that it is an absolutely brilliant idea. Let's start with you, Chrissy, because nobody is suggesting for a minute, are they, that being a parent isn't a job?
Parent in a job itself, but I think flexible working, where it really comes into play, is it provides a gateway for those parents that currently cannot work. It provides them a gateway into the working world. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think every single employer should look into that as an option.
It's a fantastic idea, Chrissy, unless you're an employer. I would have thought you can't get people through sickness, through holiday, through when they want to work and when they don't want to work. Why even bother thinking about working? Why not just get paid for sitting at home doing nothing?
Because flexibility isn't just about term time only contracts. I myself, as a working mum, having a flexible employer, it means that I can still continue my work duties when children are ill. Recently, my daughter had a huge allergic reaction. It resulted into an A&E trip. If that wasn't a flexible employee, it would mean I'd have to have time off. Whether that's paid or unpaid, it can be detrimental to the employer and the employee. So by allowing me to work from home and offering more flexibility, employers offer different time scales. So it doesn't always mean that you have to work a 9 to 5 anymore. It might mean that you're best suited to work later on in the evening and pick up your work that way. I just think it's fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 10 to 3, and Taylor Swift is back in town. Yes, she continues her mammoth Eras tour. But there are concerns about the safety of fans after all 3 of Taylor Swift's concerts were cancelled in Vienna due to concerns of a terrorist attack.
Yes, but I believe we're now going to be going to Adam Cherry, who is there at Wembley Stadium for us. Now, I understand... Oh, there you are in the thick of things. Adam, I understand that Swifties have been queuing for hours already.
Yeah, that's right, guys. Actually, just behind me over my shoulder, you'll see queues for the merchandise, the T-shirts. They're extending all around the block. I mean, it's getting very busy here very quickly. Now, on that point, on talking about merchandise, we both know that I'm a massive Swiftie. There's no doubt about that, but I don't necessarily look like one, so we've got a solution to that. So if you take a look over here, Jerry over there has sorted us out with a hat, but I haven't actually chosen the one I want yet. So, guys, I want you to help me. Which one of these hats do you think would suit me the best as a massive Swiftie?
Adam, is there a choice? The pink sparkles every day of the week. Not even a choice.
All right, OK, well, let's go for it. If I can get it out.
That's the one. Princess Adam.
There we go.
Wow.
We're sorted. It's a bit windy, so I might have to hold on to it, but I think we can agree this has been a huge success.
How much did that cost you, Adam?
It is.
How much did that set you back?
That cost just £20. Just 20. Just 20. No problem at all.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a great deal. Let's hope there's not a blank space left in your wallet after that.
Look what you made me do. I said it last time, I'll say it again.
Yeah, don't shake it off. Keep it on your head and, you know, thank you very much.
Yeah, it'll keep out the daylight.
It will keep out the daylight. But Adam, on a more serious note, you may wish to take your hat off for this one, but on a more serious note, there have been some safety concerns. Have the security been ramped up?
Yeah, so you're only allowed to, they're announcing this over the tannoys as we speak, actually. You're only allowed to take in one small bag about the size of an A4 piece of paper per person, and you're not allowed to congregate, as many fans have previously, outside the venue if you don't have a ticket, so you can't sing along outside. So there is a heightened sense of security here, but to be honest, everyone's still having a great time. It's not overshadowing the event at all.
It's not become a cruel summer.
Tom, please.
Well, you know, Swifties are nothing if not resilient, Tom. Thank you very much indeed, Adam Cherry. Have a good rest of your evening.
Oh, let's see the hat again. It's you look absolutely enchanted in the hat. There we go.
Beautiful. There we go.
Brilliant.
It matches his lovely pink shirt. Well, there you go. Bye, Adam. Good stuff. I mean, it is packed out, isn't it?
Absolutely is. You'll be telling that hat, you belong to me. It looks gorgeous. It's delicate, perhaps,
Here he goes. Here he goes.
Some
You know
might
what?
be guilty as sin.
It is a shame that people can't sit and listen to the music outside of the stadium.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some extraordinary pictures, particularly in the US, particularly in the United States, where people have been on, like, bridges about 500 metres away from the stadium.
And
because
still
of this,
singing along.
Still singing along with their dads and in the rain, and it's actually quite moving. You know, there are some things that are just nice. You know, we talk about doom and gloom all the time. You might make fun of Taylor Swift and all her little fans, but actually it's just a nice thing. It brings joy to so many people. You see the joy in these young girls' eyes, don't you?
You absolutely do.
And
well,
their dads who have to take them there.
Let's hope they all stay safe. Up next, it's Martin.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey there, here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there will be some decent sunny spells around today, but also some blustery winds and a few showers in the north. And there is a spell of rain pushing its way southeastwards. That's because of a frontal system that's currently marching across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England, already having brought quite a bit of rain this morning, and will continue to do so as it gradually makes its way across the country through the rest of today. But like I said, some sunny spells for many of us, especially across southern, eastern parts of England, and generally feeling pretty warm here. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius, a bit fresher than this further north and west, even though there will be some sunny spells and just a few showers across parts of Scotland. As we head through this evening, that rain is going to continue to make its way southeastwards, but it will have cleared away from much of Scotland, and so here it is just going to be a mixture of sunny spells and some showers as we go through the end of the day. Also a largely dry picture across much of Northern Ireland, with that rain having cleared through and only 1 or 2 showers here. Much cloudier, wetter story though across much of England and Wales as that front gradually makes its way southeastwards, but still clinging on to some fine weather across parts of the southeast for a little while longer. But that rain is going to push its way through as we go overnight, and it could actually invigorate a little bit more, so some heavy rain possible across the far southeast through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Elsewhere we will have dry and clear weather for many places, and so it could turn a little fresh for some of us. Temperatures in some rural spots could drop into mid-single figures. A bit of a wet start then possible across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but that rain should quickly clear away, and then otherwise it's looking like a pretty fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, just some blustery showers to watch out for, particularly towards the northwest of Scotland, but most places avoiding these, and temperatures relatively similar to today. Again, we're looking at highs in the mid-20s. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really
could become the next giveaway winner, with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said storm.
you made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done. Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the